Great. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. And good evening, and thank you all for joining us. This is a conference meeting with the Council of the Township of Montclair and is being broadcast live on Channel 34 and is streaming live on the Montclair TV 34 YouTube channel. It is available on demand and can and will be rebroadcast. This meeting is called pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act. This meeting was included in the revised annual notice of the meeting schedule as set forth in Resolution R-21-165 adopted by the Council at its conference meeting of August 11, 2021. Advertised in the official newspaper on August 19, 2021, posted on the bulletin boards outside of the municipal building, and has remained continuously posted. In addition, a copy of the revised annual notice is and has been available to the public and is on file in the office of the Township Clerk. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic
which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councillor Cummings,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Hurlock,
Present.
Councillor Price Abrams,
Here.
Councillor Russo,
Present.
Councillor Schlager,
Here.
Councillor Yacobelis,
Present.
Mayor Spiller.
Present. Thank you. In an effort to minimize exposure to COVID-19 and to maintain social distancing practices, this September 21st council meeting, and further meetings until the pandemic is over will only be available to the public remotely. Those who wish to participate now during public comment should dial in to 408-418-9388. When asked to enter an access code, please enter 179-374-5362. Then press pound. When asked to enter an attendee number, please simply press pound. When asked to state your name, do so and press pound. The administrator will say when it's the caller's turn to speak, and the caller will then hear 2 beeps. At that time, the caller will have an opportunity to make his or her comments. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Stafford and Mr. Fan, to manage public comment.
Thanks, Mayor. First caller would be caller with the number starting 201704. 201704. It is your turn to comment. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Mute your listening device and state your name for the record. 201704.
Good evening. My name is Evelyn Gay. And I'm representing Sister to Sister of Montclair Mentoring Group. And we are tenants at 11 Pine Street, and our organization since 1998 has mentored the young women of Montclair Public Schools in grades 4 through 12. Our members come from families which are from which they are most likely going to be the first to go to college. The vast majority qualify for free or reduced rate lunch. And 90% of them live in the 4th Ward, which is exactly where 11 Pine Street is located. Having a center for our girls in which that they can walk to and walk from even in the evening, because it's a neighborhood that they're familiar with, is vital to our existence. The center allows us to give them walk-in sessions where they can be mentored, where they can access computers to do their homework, where they can work with other students on projects that they're assigned in school. And basically, because it's in the neighborhood, it allows our girls to just know that there's a place they can go when they need to be somewhere with caring and considerate adult mentors.
Ma'am, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Did that conclude your comments?
That concludes my comments. I'm available for any questions if anyone would like to ask, anything more about our organization. I just wanted to stress how important it is to us to have a place that our girls can feel at home and receive our services that is in the neighborhood in which they live.
Thank you. We all agree.
Thank you. Next caller will be caller with the number starting 908448, 908448. It is your turn to comment. Please state your name for the record. Keep your comments to 3 minutes and mute your listening device.
Can you hear me?
We can, sir.
Hi, I'm a Montclair resident and someone who spent a lot of time in the parking business, and I chair the parking committee for the Montclair Center Business Improvement District. I want to speak tonight on Ordinance O-21-23 to amend Section 347 of the zoning code. The ordinance is based on the premise that there's a parking problem in Montclair, and unfortunately, we don't know if that's true today. Although there is a lack of real data that can help us answer the question, is there really a parking shortage in Montclair? And the only real data that exists comes from a parking study that was commissioned by the town back in 2015. And if I can, I'll read just a quick excerpt from that report. They concluded that within the heart of Montclair Center, there is tremendous excess capacity available Friday evening and weekends to provide relief to overburdened on-street spaces. A combination of information to raise awareness and understanding of these options and pricing incentives to make them more attractive may help reduce parking congestion at the curb, make better use of these substantial parking investments, and make it generally easier to find parking in these areas. Given the conditions shown, common perceptions that Montclair Center lacks available parking during weekend peaks indicate a need for management strategies that, one, ensure the driving public knows about off-street parking locations, pricing, security, and advantages relative to on-street parking, lack of time limits, shelter from the sun and precipitation, et cetera. Two, use wayfinding and informational signage to help drivers find these locations when they arrive in Montclair Center. And three, make these options more appealing by ensuring that on-street parking is priced based on its market value. So we soon will have 2 new decks in Montclair, adding another about 250 parking spaces off-street to add to the supply that was inspected when they did this study. So I urge the council to conduct a survey to gather those facts and, based on those findings, reconsider amending the zoning laws that may seriously hurt the business community by adding layers of bureaucracy and ultimately stifling new and creative development. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be caller with the number starting 973280. It is your turn to comment. 973280. Please, for the record, state your name, listening device, and keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to change our meeting.
John, we're up.
We are, okay. Hello?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much for having brother to brother on tonight. On our not being able to maintain residency here on the street, and we can't appeal to you enough to let you know how important it is that we stay here and that we have a safe haven for our young men. We've occupied this space now for almost 6 years, I believe, and many of us and reasons for that is the impact.
Sir, are you still there? Sir, if you were disconnected, just call back and we'll do our best to get you back in the queue. Next would be caller with the number started 973752. 973752. It is your turn to comment. Please, for the record, state your name, keep your comments to 3 minutes, and mute your listening device.
Hi,
Yeah,
this
please.
is Charles.
sorry to know whether you were calling 973-752.
Yes, sir, that's you. We can hear you.
I'm sorry. Thank you. My name is Charles Gormally. I'm an attorney with Brock Eichler. I'm familiar, obviously, with a number of things that are on your agenda tonight, and particularly, and just briefly, I would point out that for your consideration as a resolution is an extension of your rent increase moratorium to the end of the year. You know, and obviously I've been representing the Committee of Petitioners as well, and Ira and I had a nice argument today with the Appellate Division in connection with the appeal. But the reason I'm flagging this issue for the township is that the property owners, and particularly the Montclair Property Owners Association, has assiduously avoided confronting the township on its unilateral decision to freeze rents. And we did that because most of the sentiment in the group, in at least the first year of the pandemic, was that there was really no need to look at raising rents in the middle of the situation we were in. But now we have an end of a public health emergency, and yet the municipality is once again going to extend the rent freeze. You know, rent freeze and limiting rent increases has a permanent effect on the value of real estate, rental real estate, and multifamily properties in particular in Montclair, a permanent effect that can't ever really be recovered. And it takes this property without any investigation or consideration of the impact or the need for it. So I would really ask that you pause and reflect on the nature of what has been borne by this industry already. I'm unaware of any other industry in which the municipality decided to impose a rent freeze of any essentials of life, and yet they continue to impose this one. Pause to reflect that this really isn't a well thought out scheme and one that really isn't legally supported. And I really hope you give some due consideration to that when it comes time to consider it to extend it or to let it expire, and hopefully we move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you. Next would be caller with the number starting 973-707. 973-707. It is your turn to comment. Please, for the record, state your name. Keep your comments to 3 minutes and mute your listening device.
Yes, hi, it's Jonathan Goulden with the law firm of Clark Goulden Attorneys at Law. I represent Dick Grabowski, Grabowski Development, his related LLCs, the law firms at 20 Church Street. Just wanted to reiterate what was submitted in our correspondence earlier today to Ira and to the mayor and council members, the objections to the pending ordinance O-21-23. Couldn't state more eloquently some of the problems or issues we've identified with this ordinance that were stated earlier by the gentleman from the Montclair bid. I would also just like to note that the proposed ordinance or pending ordinance that was attached to the agenda references a schedule with respect to conversions for off-street parking that doesn't appear to be included as part of the ordinance. So at the very least, we would just appear tonight to reiterate how important we think this ordinance is and how it could negatively impact the downtown business district and businesses there, owners there, and at the very minimum, you know, carry this for further discussion, evaluation, and you know, gathering of data, as stated by the gentleman, to before we take any action on this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Next would be caller with the number starting 201-424. 201-424. It is your turn to speak. Please state your name for the record, mute your listening device, and keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Thank you. This is Ron Simoncini from the Montclair Property Owners Association. I'm also calling in reference to the prospect of an extended rent freeze. I think that there are many reasons beyond the fact that there isn't any true legal platform that allows you to do that. The governor has ended the emergency order. They dealt with all of the eviction issues and related issues of non-payment of rent through Senator Stack's bill. And now you're left with what? increased prices. We all know that there's inflation as a result of wage inflation predominantly. And so wages are going up and you're freezing rents, which means that the landlord has to pay increased wage for the people that work for him, increased prices for goods, increased prices for tax, increased prices for compliance. All those costs are increasing. And when you freeze the rent, you're depriving that owner of his opportunity to recover what's happening in the rest of the economy. So the folks who want to work, and we've all seen how many job fairs and other enticements there are to get people to take what is a fast-growing wage, that's out there. There hasn't been any study in Montclair, no research. I haven't seen any outcry. So really, this is a whole symbolic moment for several people on the council politically who, for whatever reason, feel as though they're not relevant unless they're taking property from one person and giving it to another. And that's just wrong-headed. And it's particularly wrong in light of the facts and what's happening in the marketplace. And so as you're looking at who needs help here, one of the groups that needs help is a group called property owners who are facing increased costs and need to pass those along to their customer. When the cost of having cows goes up, the cost of milk goes up. When the cost of cars goes up because aluminum is not available, people pay more for cars. Now it's costing more to provide people with housing. What's going to happen if you don't let them raise their price? Do you think that they're going to continue to be able to provide a quality product? So before this gets out of hand and everybody goes running for their lawyers again, we think that you should recognize that the emergency orders are over and you don't have any right to freeze rents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next would be caller with the number starting 973-685. 973-685. It is your turn to speak. Please, for the record, state your name, keep your comments to 3 minutes, and mute your listening device. Nine seven three 685.
Yes, this is Inder Singh, INDER SINGH, and I'm a property owner at 18-2024 Lackawanna Plaza, Montclair. And I'm here to oppose and protest against the amendment to Section 347 zoning. And I came to know about this only last week, and I was surprised. We are still going through this COVID situation, and we do not have facts. And then there's so many rights being taken away from the property owner, as I feel. And so many new restrictions are being added. Existing law allow us to add 15% to the existing square foot without going through the parking requirement, and this proposed law is taking away that right from us. In addition to that, I hear there are additional parking requirements or variance would be required if the tenants are moving or we are repurposing the property. So I feel that there's not enough information out there for the property owner, and there's not enough information to validate the facts, how the town is looking at the parking analysis. So it should be deferred at least until this COVID situation gets under control, and then everybody gets the time to validate the facts and come with the solution which is good for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Next would be caller with the number starting 973-769. 973-769. It is your turn to comment. Please, for the record, state your name, keep your comments to 3 minutes, and mute your listening device.
Thank you. My name is Lisa. I'm a Montclair resident, a business owner in Montclair Center, chair of the Montclair Bid, and I'm also a science professor at Montclair State University. Data is really important to me, and I continuously stress its importance to my students and how we can use data to make good decisions. Now, in response to the changes proposed with Ordinance 21-23, I would like to know what data this decision to change the ordinance was based on. Was it based on the last parking study in 2015, which informed us that we didn't have a parking problem? Now, I would be in complete support to a change in this ordinance if we had the data to support it. And if we don't, but it's our perception that we do have a parking problem in Montclair Center, then we need to hold off on amending this ordinance, gather that data so that we have the correct information to make the appropriate changes. But until then, let's not put any additional burdens on all of our dedicated and hardworking downtown businesses. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next would be caller with the number starting 973-280. 973-280. It is your turn to speak. Please, for the record.
Yeah, so the last four numbers, 2571.
I don't know, ma'am. I only have the first 6 numbers, so it would be you. Please, we can hear you. Feel free to.
Okay, sure.
Yes,
Okay, here I go.
Yes. Thank you. And sorry we got kicked out earlier, but I just want to stress, and I can't stress enough, that brother to brother needs to be here. And my understanding is that will be put out of the building, and along with the other organizations. And I think that would just hurt the community, hurt the impact that we've had in the community. We're in close proximity with a lot of families that have really benefited from our organization and others. And the mentoring that we're doing here and the quality of the staff that we have here and the effect that we're having on the young men. And I'm in the schools on a daily basis, and I'm able to see how brother to brother, along with some of the other practices like restorative justice, have really helped a lot of the young men in this organization. And that is why we need to be here at Pine Street going forward. But I want to thank you for allowing us to have this time. It means a lot for us. We're here at 11 Pine Street right now addressing those very issues and trying to determine how we can move forward. We're having a planning meeting. Our every intention is to continue moving forward with brother to brother here at 11 Pine Street. And my team is willing to move forward. We're ready to go. We're well staffed. And if you just ask around, you'll see just how effective the mentoring has been for our young men and even the young women in the Montclair community. Please let us know how we can have a greater impact, or how we can further move towards staying here. It means a lot to us. It means a lot to the community and those who are supporting our young men. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next would be
Mayor, Manager, can I just ask a question? People are calling in about something that I don't know. Ira, is this a contract dispute that we can't talk about, or what? Legal issue?
Well, it is a legal issue that we shouldn't be talking about. I think we all and staff here who are working on this issue are fully aware of the organizations that are using the space, that are occupying it, and how much good they're doing in the community. So, I mean, that's the underlying basis for our efforts to try to keep the space. But I can't talk about it in any further detail. I'm sorry.
I just want, we thank everybody for the great work they do. And certainly want to help, but I want to make sure everybody understands we're in the middle of something.
Councilor Russo, I think they're concerned. Yeah, Councilor Russo, to bring you up to speed, there's some concern that they will not be allowed to remain in the building and within the next few months. So I think that's where the impetus behind the calls are to that, because I think this is one of those things where there hasn't been much discussion about it. And, it seems to be really moving quickly. And so they are all concerned that after, I think it may be November 1st, they are supposed to be out of that facility. And we all agree that the work that they do has been very beneficial to the township, particularly the organizations that work there, helping those that are less fortunate. And so and they do multiple works across. What brother to brother does is different than what sister to sister does. What Sophia does and what Succeed Together do, they're all really impacting as a matter of what is impacting. It has been for the last, they've been in that facility for so long. It's something that would be a shame that if that they had to move, because there is no other facility that we have that can support their efforts.
Thank you, Counselor. I go back a long time with this. They started out a long time ago, and I hate to see any of these groups. Sophia, I've gotten calls from people, Succeed Together, and all. I've heard the folks tonight, sister to sister, brother to brother. It's not something we want. I want just the public to understand. We don't want to do anything to hurt them. It's a contract dispute, which is something we can't talk about.
Well, just to be clear, Councilman, too, it's a sale, right? So they're transferring ownership. It's a new owner coming in, and they're potentially not going to honor the ability for these entities to stay. But I think, as Councilman Cummings noted very aptly, and you are also expressing, certainly I know it's a sentiment for every single one of my colleagues on here, that we appreciate, as is evidenced by the support we provide them every year. All of the organizations that are in that space, they just do phenomenal work for our community and beyond. And absolutely, we are fully supportive, and would certainly hope that the new owner of the building would choose to allow those groups to stay, for sure. And with that, I know that Ira, it's an ongoing dispute between two entities, and they can, of course, have to work on that. But thank you.
Yeah, and I should say, a dispute may be too strong a word at this point. I would call it, a negotiation perhaps, but hopefully we'll just see how it develops.
Next would be caller with the number starting 973868. 973868. It is your turn to comment.
Next would be caller with the number starting 973868. 973868. It is your turn to comment. Next would be caller with the number.
Please do us the service of muting your listening device, keeping your comments to 3 minutes, and stating your name for the record.
Hello, this is Jason Gleason, Executive Director of the Montclair Center Business Improvement District. Calling in tonight about Ordinance O-21-23 to amend Section 347 of the Zoning Code. I want to thank you all for your time and consideration over the last month through multiple phone calls, meetings, and listening to me rant. I considered calling tonight and letting you know very specific data from each deck and lot from our own internal parking survey from this past weekend. According to many of our businesses, the busiest weekend since pre-COVID days. I'll spare you the specific details, but it is worth noting that at all points during the day on Saturday, between 800 and 1,000 off-street parking spaces were available. I considered citing the master plan, specific burdens to our businesses, how vacancies will increase, property values will decrease, and on and on. And all I really have to say here is that the potential harm to the downtown business district and the township as a whole far outweigh taking another month to make a transparent, nuanced, data-driven approach to creating a solution that suits the needs of the township and is also business-friendly. I truly believe it can be done. Please consider the dozens of emails that you all received from property owners and business owners alike, and just consider tabling this ordinance for the time being. Thank you all very much for your service.
Thank you. Next would be 973267. Caller with the number starting 973267. It is your turn to comment. Please, for the record, state your name, mute your listening device, and keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you. My name is Bruce Seidman. I'm a property owner in Montclair, along with my wife and my son. We've got 4 small properties in Montclair. I just want to say that I think the rent increase should be able to go through. It's been far too long property owners have been working for probably over a year and a half now without any increases in rents. If it were need-based, I would probably get behind that, actually, as I think most property owners would, but it's just blanket. So while we've got tenants making quite a bit more money, our costs going up all the time, for Montclair to put a freeze on increases in rent is absolutely completely ridiculous. It's gone on far too long. The difficult part of the pandemic is somewhat over. The tenants that are having trouble paying rent currently, I know we are working with, and I know the other property owners are working with diligently. We care about our tenants very much, and I think that that you should consider putting an end to that stipulation right now. And I would also thank everybody for their service on the committee. I know everybody's trying to do the right thing, but you really need to think about the property owners now just a little bit. And I know that's difficult because it's easy to kind of hate landlords, and landlords get a bad rap. But I think enough is enough. I think the landlords have done an outstanding job keeping everybody in their apartments over the last year and a half. It's been difficult. Now we've got costs increasing, and we have no way to pass those on. And again, it's not need-based. If it were need-based, I think landlords might even get behind it, but it's not need-based. It's just blanket. So you've got tenants making 25% more, their rent frozen, and it's not fair to the landlords. It's completely ridiculous. But I thank you for listening, and again, thank you for your service, committee.
Thank you, sir. Next would be caller 9 with the number starting 908-868, 908-868. It is your turn to comment, please. For the record, state your name. Keep your comments to 3 minutes and mute your listening device. I'm sorry, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Sure. My name is Tamisa Covington, and I represent Sophia, and I'm also calling in regard to 11 Pine Street. And thank you guys so much for acknowledging our hard and diligent work. Sophia, like our fellow tenants and other community partners whom we share the space with, we really rely heavily on the space to service our population. And without having the additional worry of where we're going to be, we really want to continue to keep our focus on the women, children, and the men who we service. We want to continue to focus on the domestic violence survivors and the services that we provide that they really would have a hard time getting elsewhere. But not just that, we actually have collaborative partnerships with brother to brother and sister to sister and succeed together. So we would hate to have to think about just an alternative way to collectively meet or to collectively think about, you know, how we're going to continue to support one another, because we also support one another. And I'm hoping that this new owner can really understand the beautiful impact that we're making on our community. I'm not just proud of our service area, but like I said, our fellow tenants and our community partners, we work hard and we're grassroots and we don't have a lot of resources. And, you know, it's really, really important that they understand that if we can provide these services and we can just touch people in such a way, it'll make our community that much better. Thank you for your time, and that concludes my remarks.
Thank you. Next would be caller with the number starting 201-921, 201-921. It is your turn to comment. Please, for the record, state your name, mute your listening device, and keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Yes, good evening. Are you able to hear me clearly?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Excellent. Good evening. This is Ahava, president of the Tenants Organization of Montclair, the advocacy group created for rent control. Happy to be on the call tonight after an amazing morning that I'm going to come back to. And I'm requesting my 5 minutes. If I have to call back in, that's fine for another topic. But I do want to speak on the rent freeze extension, which is still needed, and make some comments about some comments that were made before I got on the call. So basically, DCA money is still coming in. For those who don't know in the public, which may really just be a few people who don't know in the public, the DCA money is still being released to tenants as well as landlords and property owners. Montclair is doing what is right for the community. Very well thought out decisions on behalf of tenants. We have still had unconscionable property owners who did not fully adhere and abide by the ordinance rent freeze on increases by law of the Township of Montclair. Wages are not going up for everyone. And there's been tremendous stress placed on families and individuals, as everyone knows, throughout the pandemic, which is not over. All of these, well, this is listed because the emergency is lifted. Okay, an emergency being lifted does not mean that everything is healed, because it's been an emergency for months and months and months. We know how long that this has been going on, so it doesn't just go away. So this is still needed because the impact, similar to the trauma of September 11 and other events of the past, are still going to be happening for individuals and families beyond a paper directive to lift an emergency. So I just want to make that clear to everyone who just still doesn't get that. There are still people who are not leaving their homes. What the council is doing is right-headed, caring, and compassionate. And the council has every right to freeze rents. We have no cows in Montclair, at least not live ones. We should not be compared to townships with cows and aluminum cars. That's very interesting. Things that make you say, Now, I would like to go on to thank our township attorney on a lighter, better note even, for today's court hearing. 4 TUN leaders, which also include Montclair Housing Commission leaders, were in attendance in 4 of the 8 available seats in the courtroom today in Trenton. Today, our township attorney, Ira, was very clear, concise, here I go, that word, compassionate, and absolutely amazing legal prowess when speaking about the petitions that we know has been an issue that we've been in court for. There were 3 judges who asked the right questions. Having been a federal grand court jury reporter for a few years in a past life, I know the value of clarity, calm, and honesty with regards to the law and the laws that we live by and that are governing our court system. I was very proud of Ira today for the way he represented our community.
Ms. Felicia, that sound that you just heard was your time expiring, so I would ask that you conclude your comments.
Yes, I'm finishing. We still need the rent freeze on increases because all of our landlords are not of the same ilk. Who's making 25% more money? Who's making up these numbers? The rent freeze on increases is still the right thing to do. Lastly, the Tenants Organization of Montclair will be having a meeting at Watchung Park this coming Thursday, 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., and then again 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Edgemont Park. So that's Watchung Park, Thursday morning, 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., and then at Edgemont, our evening 1 hour from 7 to 8 p.m. for people to come out, get an info, and join us, as well as find out about accessing rights. Thank you again, Mayor, Council, Township Attorney Karasik, for all of your work in moving this forward.
I have a question in response to Ms. Feliciano's
Councilwoman, please, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Mayor. She states that there are unscrupulous landlords that are raising rents illegally during our freeze. Are those landlords being held to task for that? Anybody know that?
Mr. Krasik, that probably is in, Mr. Krasik, probably in your wheelhouse on that, but I think you've noted before that you do reach out to, when you hear those instances with a phone call or a letter, or correct, Ira, in most instances that's been rectified, or do you want to opine on how that's gone?
Well, we have made calls, the tenant organization made calls. We've explained to people in the past how they can go about protecting themselves, which is in the landlord-tenant court. We don't technically enforce the rent freeze with our own officers, but we do explain, and so does the tenant organization, explain to tenants how they go about asserting the rent freeze as a defense against anyone's effort to raise rent. And we have in fact called some landlords in the past who have raised rents and explained about the freeze to them. And there are many calls, we've gotten many calls, my office, from landlords asking about it. And once it's explained to them, generally speaking, the ones I've talked to at least seem like they're going along with the freeze. We haven't had any legal challenges to it. So, I mean, it's been a mixed way of addressing it, but I haven't heard, I hear the caller, but we haven't gotten any complaints here lately. And by the way, I just have to thank for all those compliments. I always have to say thank you.
Okay, thank you for your response.
Next would be caller with the number starting 973-744. 973-744. It is your turn to comment. Please, for the record, state your name, mute your listening device, and keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Luther Fleury. I'm lived in Montclair for 21 years. I've been a small landlord downtown for 21 years. I've been engaged with the BID for 20 years, and I spent 4 or 5 years of those as a executive director of the BID, Business Improvement Director, the Business Improvement District. I've also been involved in placemaking and consulting with other downtowns throughout the town, throughout the state. New mouth. So what we're talking about here is zoning, and the purpose of zoning is to describe different uses, different looks and feels, and different parts of town. And the expectation is that most towns have multiple sets of zoning for multiple places. In the 70s, Montclair was blessed with a far-sighted planner who envisioned a true downtown and set rules and zoning in place, such as the ordinance that we're talking about editing right now. Those rules and thoughts were, embedded in master plans starting in the 80s. They were enhanced with ordinances by the following 2 planners since then and the following several master plans to all move towards best practices of what creates a successful commercial district, a successful downtown. One of the key elements to this are the very items that are being struck by this ordinance. These are the very items that made the golden goose that is downtown, that serves landlords, that serves businesses, that serves residents, and serves visitors so well. The very things that made us a great American Main Street are at the core of what this ordinance is trying to strike down. Now, I understand that there's a sense of equity, but if you want equity, then give everybody the same zoning. Say every place should be the same thing. We're looking for the same pink house on every block. We're looking for the same parking requirements on every block. But a downtown should not treat parking the same way that the stores on Valley Road do, or the same ways that a residential neighborhood should. A downtown should be unique and the way that the current zoning describes. If there are places where you think that the C1 zoning and its parking requirements should not be applied, change the zoning. Don't change the way that the zoning is applied. The parking ordinance as it is has been in place for so long and I'm now looking at notes as opposed to extemporizing. I think that covers most of what I want to say. What you're proposing goes against a sequence of 40, 50 years of laws, of a series of master plans and master plan edits, including the current master plan and the current proposed revisions of master plan. It goes against the most recent revisions, the most recent parking studies. It goes against what Jason said.
Fleury, that sound that you heard was your time expiring, so please do us the service of concluding your comments.
Certainly, I heard no tone, but in short, this seems ill thought out and ill considered. Please vote against.
Thank you, sir. Next will be caller with the number starting 973-746. 973-746. It is your turn to comment, please. 973-746. It is your turn to comment. do us the service of muting your listening device, state your name for the record, and keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Hi, I believe you can hear me now.
Yes, sir, we can.
This is Jeffrey Jacobson. I'm a member of the Planning Board, although I'm calling tonight just to express my personal opinion. Calling about O-21-23, which is neither ill thought out nor ill considered. The genesis for the ordinance that you're considering, as the council knows, but members of the public may not, is a project that recently came before the Planning Board for approval, which it's a nice project, but it's going to have a massive impact on parking downtown. But the Planning Board couldn't do anything about that massive impact on parking because of the one-time exclusion that the council is considering removing. This has been examined, and I don't know where small business people got the idea that this ordinance, if passed, would have an impact on small business. It would take a very weird set of circumstances for this ordinance to have an impact on small businesses if adopted. And if there's any concern about that, there are easy fixes to this that could eliminate any doubt of this having an impact on small business. The issue here that I would ask the council to address is we can't have too many more of these big projects that have massive impacts on parking where the Planning Board is without power to do anything about it and without power to cause the developers behind that project to mitigate somehow the impact on parking. That's what's really before you tonight. That's what you're considering doing. It's a necessary change because whether or not there is a parking problem, and we all have our opinions about that, we all know that there certainly would be if we had a few more projects like this with 70 or 80 spot impacts that the Planning Board can't do anything to mitigate. So whether the council adopts the ordinance in its current form or wants to tweak it a little bit to address the concerns that you've heard tonight from the Business Improvement District, I would urge the council to do one or the other because we can't have any more projects like that come before us where we can't do anything about it. Thank you very much for your attention and your time.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. Next would be caller with the number starting 973-619. 973-619. It is your turn to comment. Please, for the record, state your name, keep your comments to 3 minutes, and mute your listening device.
Yes, hello. This is Ahava calling in. I'm calling in for my 3 minutes as a...
I'm sorry, ma'am. There's no second shots at the calls. I apologize for that. Mayor, there is nobody else in the queue.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stafford. I appreciate that. Thank you. Next, moving through our agenda, I appreciate all those comments. We have a number of other items. First is approval of minutes. They've been presented to us, the minutes of April 6th and May 4th. Without objection, I'm going to move both. Are there any corrections or additions?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have a couple proclamations, and certainly the first one, especially with just a heavy heart. But Councilman Cummings, would you mind doing the first proclamation for us, please?
Mayor, I appreciate this. As many as you know, Mr. Pelham was a great Montclair resident and Montclair citizen who, ironically, I met him at Glenfield Park on the basketball courts when I was probably around 7 or 8 years old playing basketball. He was my coach for the Montclair Community Action Program. And the last time I saw him was at Glenfield Park at the basketball courts when Project Oasis semifinals. So I read this with tremendous respect, but also love for him, his family, and the township that he served so much. And so this proclamation and memoriam, Albert Edward Pelham, whereas the mayor and council of the Township of Montclair are saddened by the recent passing of Albert Edward Pelham, longtime servant leader of the community, former executive director of the Montclair Neighborhood Development Corporation, president of the Montclair branch of the NAACP, co-chair of the Montclair African American Heritage Foundation, and a cherished resident for Montclair. And whereas Mr. Pelham was born on March 30th, 1950 at Mountainside Hospital. Albert was raised in Montclair and attended Montclair Public Schools through graduation from Montclair High School in 1968. He enlisted in the U.S. Army, where he served for 3 years and was honorably discharged in 1971. After returning home from the Army, Albert met the love of his life, Audrey Jones, and they married on November 19, 1975. The Pelhams were blessed with 46 years of marriage, 2 children, and 2 grandchildren. And whereas Mr. Pelham attended Bloomfield College and graduated in 1979 with a bachelor's degree in accounting. He worked at Prudential Insurance Company, where he held numerous roles and ascended into leadership during his 18-year corporate career. In 1997, Mr. Pelham recognized that the youth of the community were in need, so he assisted in the foundation of Project Oasis. This summer program was launched through MNDC with mission to enrich Montclair teenagers in education, recreation, and cultural awareness. Project Oasis continues to be a mainstay of the agency and has empowered thousands of young people. And whereas Mr. Pelham dedicated his life and worked tirelessly to ensure community needs were met. He was a master at developing and nurturing relationships with every level of government for the benefit of the people. Through the years, he secured hundreds of thousands of dollars in grant funding, and created countless youth programs, including a program for suspended youth at the suspended Montclair High School students that offered academic training and counseling at the Wally Choice Community Center in Glenfield Park as an alternative to sitting idly at home. Most recently, as schools closed, Mr. Pelham, due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the issue of digital divide became more acute, he partnered with the Township and the Montclair Fund for Education Excellence to establish a remote learning facility for students to have access to virtual learning programs. This program continued into the summer, helping students who suffered academically from school closures. And whereas Mr. Pelham proudly committed to his craft, his many decades of service and contributions to the community is a testament to his love for helping people and willingness to serve. And now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of the Township of Montclair hereby recognize the remarkable contributions of Albert Pelham over the course of his life, express the thanks of a grateful community, and extended sympathy to his widow, Audrey, son, Dwayne, daughter, Rhonda, and his many family members and friends who will cherish his memory. And so I so move.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, David, for that. And, certainly I know that, even immediately after and still now, we're all, still somewhat in shock and just certainly saddened. And as a community, miss just not only a legend, but somebody who was so impactful for so many. So, thank you, David. Appreciate that. Next is a proclamation, and this one expressing gratitude. Gratitude to the Fire Department, Police Department, Department of Community Service for their service during and post Tropical Storm Ida. Whereas on the evening of Wednesday, September 1st, 2021, Tropical Storm Ida gravely impacted all areas of New Jersey. The state suffered heavy flooding, severe power outages, and multiple reports of tornadoes. This caused widespread devastation to communities, homes, and businesses. The Montclair Fire Department, Montclair Police Department, and Department of Community Services swiftly responded to the needs of Montclair residents and the harm caused by Tropical Storm Ida. Whereas members of the fire department rescued individuals trapped in motor vehicles and structures from rapidly rising waters. In addition, the fire department protected the public by enacting safety measures for recognizable hazards, such as downed wires or inundated areas. The fire department successfully pumped out water from over 200 flooded properties, including schools, businesses, and homes. And I will just add here, I remember being here and leaving town hall that evening, pretty late, trying to get around and see how things were going, and seeing all these guys out, really just doing tremendous work of all the things we're noting here, literally saving lives, rescuing people, and making things safe. So and the fire department for days after, pumping everything out, including the schools. Big kudos there, because we know how important that was, as well as all the individual homes and what an impact that had in allowing schools to open. So a big thank you. Whereas the police department closed streets that were hazardous and controlled the traffic flow to ensure the safety of the public and other emergency responders, members of the police department advised and educated the community on safe practices during and after the storm. The police department helped residents whose vehicles were abandoned and towed after the storm. Police dispatchers answered calls and routed corresponding officers and departments where needed. Again, just a tremendous job. Whereas the Department of Community Services assisted in preserving and restoring township services throughout Tropical Storm Ida and its aftermath. They placed barricades on the roads, closed unsafe public structures. The department cleared debris and clogged sewage drains, roads, and other public right-of-ways. They removed blockages in streams and waterways to prevent sewage backups. The Department of Community Services also implemented additional refuse collection dates for the disposal of items damaged because of the storm. And I'm also going to say, and certainly Mr. Stafford, big kudos to you and everybody in the department. What probably many people would not be aware is that as that was right over Labor Day weekend, with just some quick phone calls, you got them to immediately, and they did so without hesitation, agree to come in, over that time period, all weekend long. They were picking up and clearing out garbage from our schools, which had nowhere to put it, no one who could take it, and no dumpsters available. Loading all of that up, filling our trucks, which then would be unavailable to pick up any garbage throughout the town, who then were willing to be here at 3 a.m. To get to the dumps, which again, we had to make calls to make sure we get them open, get to the dumps to dump the garbage out of those trucks, to then come back to then start their runs to pick up the garbage here in town. I mean, the logistics of that, the effort there, the willingness of them to come in and do all of those things, and the ability to have it done in a way that people didn't even, really feel that was what was going on. Really just a testament to their great work. Couldn't be more proud of the work that they did there. So Mr. Stafford, please convey that. I know I've shared that with you numerous times and passed that along because I saw it firsthand and was just really impressive. So thank you. Whereas the emergencies requiring first responders can occur at any time, the fire department, police department, Department of Community Services responded promptly and efficiently during Tropical Storm Ida. These departments were successful in mitigating the effects of Tropical Storm Ida and in keeping Montclair residents safe. As a result of their coordinated efforts, there were no major injuries reported in Montclair during Tropical Storm Ida. Now, therefore, the Mayor and the Council of the Township of Montclair, County of Essex, hereby extend sincere gratitude and appreciation to the Montclair Fire Department, the Montclair Police Department, and the Department of Community Services for their service to the Montclair community, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. And I know it's shared by all of us. There are great appreciation and thank you. Next, moving on the agenda, we have pending ordinance for second reading. This is Ordinance O-21-23, ordinance to amend Section 347 zoning, the Code of the Township of Montclair. Going to open the public hearing without objection. Is there objection? Okay, it's considered open. Mr. Stafford, is there anyone in the queue in the dial who wishes to be heard in relation to the proposed ordinance?
Yes, sir. Caller with the number starting 973-330. It is your turn to comment. 973-330. Please state your name for the record. Keep your comments to 3 minutes and mute your listening device.
Good evening. My name is Frank Rabacki. I think everyone on the council knows my position on this ordinance, and I really don't want to cover the same ground again. But I'm really confused by our business improvement director, district director, and his statement about a survey about available spaces. And I think I'm sure he was trying to be truthful in his own way, but when he said there were up to 1,000 spaces available this past whatever period of time, this past week or whatever, am I to understand that we're building the Midtown deck at a cost of $9 million with 330 odd spaces of capacity that we don't need? Am I also to understand the ruckus that the bid raised about closing the Midtown lots before other parking was available. When they knew they had 1,000 extra parking spaces downtown, I just get frustrated that, we can table this, but if we're not going to have any honesty to this conversation, then I don't think we're going to make much progress. And I really condemn the Business Improvement District and their supporters for really spreading inaccurate information. Thank you very much. Good evening.
Thank you. Next would be caller with the number starting 973-685. 973-685. It is your turn to comment. Please, for the record, state your name, mute your listening device, and keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Good evening. This is Inder Singh. I guess I have already stated my objection to this particular change in the zoning. So I just heard that if anybody wants to object, so should I say it again?
You're welcome to say it again, sir, although I think the governing body has heard your comments. Did you have anything else that you would like to say?
No, basically I'm objecting to this. Thank
Okay.
you.
We hear you. Thank you for calling, sir.
Sure.
Next would be caller with the number starting 973-868. It is your turn to comment. 973-868.
Next would be caller with the number.
Please mute your listening device, state your name, and keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Well, this is Jason Gleason, Executive Director of the Montclair Center bid. Would this be an acceptable time to, well, I suppose, defend our position to Mr. Rabacki here, or?
I would suggest, sir, that you direct your comments to the chair, which in this form of government is the mayor. You're welcome to say anything you'd like. However, I would suggest that you direct your comments to the chair.
Well, Mr. Chair, as you know, the making the sink on Glenridge Avenue had absolutely nothing to do with the lack of the 8 spaces that were taken away by the closing of Glenridge Avenue. I think we could all agree that 8 spaces being lost by the shutdown of the street was paled in comparison to the fact that the businesses on that street had no access with no notice. If you'd like the factual information that were gathered on Saturday as to the abundance of off-street parking, I am more than happy to share that with either yourself or Mr. Rabacki or anyone else who is interested in that. But the facts remain the facts. On the busiest Saturday that we have had in the Business Improvement District since pre-COVID days, and you're more than welcome to survey my businesses yourself, Mr. Rabacki, there were between 800 and 1,000 available off-street parking spaces. And that's all that I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, there is no one else in the queue.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stafford. There's no one else in the queue. I'm going to close debate without objection. I'm closing the hearing. Thank you. The hearing is moved. And as such, for Ordinance 021-23, I so move.
Second.
Sorry.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions, concerns, comments? Councilman Bells.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is, I just think this is really complicated. You and I have had this conversation. I've had this conversation with a few of our colleagues. Not everybody, haven't had a chance to or time to be honest. So I want to avoid hyperbole here, and I want to avoid, opinions as much as I can. Some of this is going to just be speculation, and some of this is going to be maybe even repeating some things that were said earlier. I don't disagree at all with the premise that, we have to have some control over the size of projects, the size of development projects that we permit, and the parking that the uses of those developments the parking demand that the uses of those developments end up generating. I don't disagree with that premise at all, really. I do think, and to Mr. Gleason's point, we do have quite a lot of overall capacity. I think over the last 40 years or so, since 1978, when this exemption was put in place, what we've really seen is the densification of downtown. We've become an urban center, right? We have now a urban core, and the heyday of being able to drive downtown and pull up in front of a store or restaurant and park, even frankly anywhere near it, I just think is gone and long gone and never coming back. I think you can't put that genie back in the bottle. So I just question what this is going to, in its current form, what it's going to achieve. I think, yes, it will block bigger projects and some of the parking challenges that have come as a result of those maybe being thought of too much in isolation and not comprehensively. But I think it's a fact, and the attorney can confirm this or not, and Mr. Karasik, I think it's a fact that by getting rid of this exemption, it doesn't matter what square footage you are, it doesn't matter what type of business you are, if you are changing your use of the business to something more intensive. So if a bank like Investors Bank on the corner of Park and Bloomfield wants to become a coffee shop, if the owner of that building wants that to become a coffee shop, that's a more intense use of that space. And so it goes from being retail to restaurant and requires more parking. And so would therefore then require the owner of that building to now have to go before the zoning board to get approval or to get a variance, essentially, to approve that new use or that different use of that space. And I get that, right? Except that to open a business in Montclair or anywhere is just really, really complicated. And I don't think there's a lot of wisdom in creating new requirements to have to go before a land use board if you want to open a business downtown. And in that example of Investors Bank turning into a coffee shop, let's just say, I don't know why customers for that bank or that coffee shop couldn't be told to go park at the Seymour Street deck or at the Crescent deck or at the Fullerton deck, where we know there is capacity. Decks are not the solution for everything, certainly not parking downtown. When we have a crisis with our meters, we have a crisis with signage, we have a crisis with on-street parking in general. We don't have the wayfinding infrastructure and signage that we need to direct flow around. We don't have enough, I don't think our permitting process is nuanced enough. I think we need a lot of updates there. When we have a 3-year waiting list for residents for overnight parking, and yet I saw it with my own eyes on Saturday night at 8 o'clock, 185 spots available in the Crescent deck. That tells me that we're just not allocating spots as we should. So I have just a few concerns with this, and I think we need to keep talking about it, and I think we can get to a place where we all agree on some version of this that doesn't create a requirement for businesses, small businesses who are changing their use type, to have to go before a land use board. I'm just going to use an example that is, just easy to maybe understand. If we want to put a coffee shop somewhere, and it's either going to be a privately owned coffee shop or Dunkin' Donuts. Dunkin' Donuts has the money and they have the attorneys to be able to wait as long as it takes to get approvals to be able to open up their location. Maybe it's a franchise. Maybe that's not the right example. Maybe Starbucks. An independent coffee shop, if they're on a trajectory to open up their business, and let's say they're planning to open it up on August 1st, and we're saying, no, now you got to go to get a variance, and who knows when you're going to get on the schedule for the zoning board, and who knows if you're even going to be approved or not. One, I'm thinking, if I'm a business owner, why am I even going to try? I could end up not being able to open my business for months at a time. And that costs them money. And therefore, that owner, that building, may then want to just go with the Starbucks versus the independent coffee shop, because the Starbucks can wait it out and the independent coffee shop owner can't afford to wait it out. And I also just don't understand why we're doing this at this moment. I understand what happened with one particular building on Gates and the parking requirement that the planning board didn't feel like it had the tools to deal with, to have the tools to be able to reject that project. But this is not that can't be an excuse to overreact to the point where we are not using data, to some of the other callers' points earlier, to make an informed decision here. You know, we have a pandemic which has completely thrown everyone's habits off. We have no idea where things are going to land. Are we going to return to a 5-day work week where people are parking at train stations 5 days a week and commuting into the city? Or is there going to be a hybrid work from home model? Do we need to rethink our permitting overall? What is the reality when when Glenridge Avenue is open in addition to all the other decks? We have Bay Street, we have Fullerton, we have Seymour Street, we have the Crescent, we've got Valley and Bloom, we've got all of these decks where I only looked at 2 of them on Saturday night, and there was 390 spots available at 8 p.m. on a peak Saturday night. So I don't understand why businesses can't be given the ability to, or even told to, make sure your customers know where to park. You know, like, I don't know why we're going to tell a business that you have to figure out where you're going to park your customers downtown, when the town is providing, we have this infrastructure for people to park if they're going to restaurants or they're going to stores. And by the way, if they go and they park in the Crescent deck or the Fullerton deck, we're making money off of that. So why wouldn't we want a place that's generating business and buzz, like a Falborg downtown, which is really exciting and good for the town, for those customers to go park in the Crescent deck or the Fullerton deck and pay us as a town to park there? I don't understand that. We have the aftermath of Ida that businesses are trying to recover from. We have the pandemic that businesses are trying to recover from. And I just don't understand the wisdom behind creating a requirement for them, for any business that's changing its type of use, to have to go before zoning to get approval. It just, to introduce another level of bureaucracy, to make it more difficult to do business, to open up a business in the first place, to change your location, to change your type. It just seems completely counterintuitive when we're all sort of saying, like, we're at this place now because what we've done to get us here has been successful. It's worked. So I feel pretty strongly, I don't know if you could tell, I feel pretty strongly that, you know, we need to change some of the things in this before we pass it. Like, at the very least, there should be some sort of square footage cutoff. Let's exempt really small businesses, right? Let's exempt the small square footage small businesses from this. We're not having to go through those hurdles to not put them at a disadvantage with the big corporate players. I'm really concerned that we're going to end up with more national corporate brands downtown because, again, they can wait it out. They can go through the process. They can afford to do that. And the mom and pops can't. Or we're over-engineering and trying to over-control and not allowing the free market to dictate what kind of establishments will work well downtown or not. And I'm a big believer in the free market in this case. You know, most responsible businesses are going to study all of these issues before they decide to open or not. They're going to look at parking capacity. They're going to look at the average household income and the demographics of people in the region to decide if it's worthwhile or not. And most responsible businesses, if they're looking at all of that data, will make the decision of whether or not it's worth it to open. And I think we need to continue to empower the businesses to do that. So I know I've gone on a while. I'm just really hoping that we can take our time with this, take a few more weeks, try and negotiate on some of these bits where I think we can solve for the bigger issues, like the bigger development projects and the stress that that's creating, especially for traffic, especially for circulation, especially for on-street parking. Try and address the meter issue, but carve out an exemption for smaller businesses to not have to go through bureaucratic hurdles that I think is going to potentially can harm the character and the types of businesses we have downtown. So sorry for the long rant, but thank you.
Any other questions, concerns, comments? All right.
Lori, did you have something to say?
Councilwoman Price Abrams. Councilwoman, are you muted or were you?
You're muted, Laura.
Okay, I didn't know if Councilor Cummings was about to speak, but I will take my turn. Thank you for, we had a lot of robust calls, so I want to appreciate the people in the community who have been writing to all of us, who have called in, my colleagues who've commented here now, and some of the conversations we've had till now. It was pointed out at some point in our discussions, we all did endorse it last time that got it to this point, and that I just wanted to acknowledge as a common courtesy from the time that I had seen it in the packet, didn't have a great opportunity or a long time to give it the care and review it needed. So out of consideration for those who had put it forth, we moved it forward. And then we found ourselves with these few weeks, and a lot more considerations and concerns have been raised. As the third ward councilor, and the C1 and C3 business districts, which are the affected ones by the revisions, I didn't even appreciate this till we started discussing this, but they only exist in the third ward. So there are considerations that impact our business district and the ward I represent. And I'm mindful that I represent that business district and those businesses and the tenants and the property owners, and also the residents who live there, as I am. And I used to live closer to walk up to Church Street. Now I live a little further from that point. But the point is, I want to have us balance the needs of all of those parties. I agree this feels to those who are advancing it, as addressing something that's out of balance itself. But I do feel like if it is passed as is tonight, I really would like to request, Mayor, from you as our chairman and really, in some sense, a leader of this conversation, that we will revisit it in very short order, but have the kind of conversations with the parties of interest. We've heard a lot from the bid, but other folks who may not be represented by the bid at all, and to hear what we should revise to a more nuanced place, because I do feel like it's a little too much sweeping in the other direction. I'm mindful again for residents, if there's an impact because people are parking into residential neighborhoods just south of, say, Bloomfield Avenue, that has impact for the folks who are trying to park at their homes. Perhaps there are answers that have to do with creating, permit only for residents, and some streets probably have that. I know some do not. But let's figure all of it out and not only address this one thing. The concern is when we do something like this, we pack it, and then there's a big list of other things that we have yet to get to. So my consideration is that we have an understanding that if this is going to pass tonight with a majority of the members present, that we will revisit it within a couple of months, having taken the time. And I'm saying a couple of months instead of a couple of weeks, because I want to bring the nuance to it and get all the parties. I know that, leadership requires just making a step, but let's not stop there, because I think leadership also requires really hearing what the concerns are. And I think Councilor Yacobelis laid out some of the things that I would have also added. Whether there's truly a parking shortage, I'm not perfectly clear. What are these landlords supposed to do? If you're, let's say, never mind landlords, if you're the tenant, where are you coming up with this parking? I mean, I don't know where you're supposed to actually get the parking to provide for. And I would assume it maybe just something I don't understand, but others I've discussed it with didn't seem to understand it either, where they're supposed to get the parking. So we understand it's all about them going before the zoning board. And I concur with the comments that smaller actors in the space, and that is the diversity of our downtown experience that we all enjoy. And so many is the idiosyncratic, sometimes small businesses that actually give the character and charm to the town that we appreciate so much. So if we wanted all cookie cutter, maybe it could be, again, bigger national kind of brands that come through. We value those in our downtown as well, but we want there to be a mix of all of that. Signage has been mentioned. I believe that is part of the issue as well, getting people to the actual parking. I just really want to emphasize one of the points Councilor Yacobelis, made. Let's direct them to the decks that we've got and bring in the revenue for their parking there. I mean, we, in a sense, leave that money on the table, and I don't know why we need to impact, again, for modest kind of development. So potentially, is there a way to, even tonight, would we consider amending this?
If I may, I think
Counselor?
we, as a member of, being on the bid and hearing their concerns at our last meeting.
Counselor?
Councilor Cummings, I think Councilwoman Price Abrams was just finishing, was doing her, we're speaking, or I'll to say. So Councilwoman, do you want to?
Thanks. I will look through my list and see if there's anything left to say, and then certainly pass it along to my colleague. So whether there truly is a shortage or not, I guess is a matter for us to really understand better. Whether we want to find a way to amend to not impact tenants of smaller spaces, if that's something that we would consider doing tonight, I think that would be.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, but let me finish if you don't mind.
Councilman Price Abrams, I think he's having a little technical issues,
Okay.
so he's connecting.
Right.
And now I see he's lost his thing. So bear with him. I think he's not hearing when you're not or are speaking. So okay.
I'll keep moving my head. Anyway, as has also been noted, it's been a time of great stress in the community. Think about the block between Park and Fullerton up Bloomfield Avenue. These are people who are
Yeah, can you hear me? Because I'm going in and out. Yeah, can you hear me?
We got you now, Councilman Cummings. I don't know if you can hear us. It looks like
Mayor, of anybody?
Can you hear us? All right. So Mr. Fan, maybe you can work with Councilman Cummings just on his technical issue and hopefully get him back square. Councilwoman Price Abrams, would you continue while we're doing that?
Thank you. So again, time of great stress. I'm talking about the block.
Well, I hope you can hear me.
Park and Fullerton, that block had such devastation from, Tropical Storm Ida. Those folks have been writing saying they haven't been able to pick up their heads to sort of stop and even understand what's going on. It just feels like a little bit much at the same time. Those are the comments I wanted to add to what's been previously shared. I would be open to some modification if there's a strong will to get something endorsed tonight with the commitment that we will continue this conversation and really have stakeholder engagement. That would be my request. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Councilman Russo, do you have something you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'd like to hear, but I don't want to be cutting off David if he's back on.
Well, he's having technical issues and he's off. So if you've got something, please.
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm more concerned with the process. It's more of a process objection. I absolutely support that mechanical parking stacker provision, that we should not have those be allowed unless they're approved, absolutely permitted with a plan approval. But I really don't like those, and I'm glad that's in here. I've had so many calls, emails, and discussions with business people who I respect. I also respect Mr. Rabaki and Mr. Jeff Jacobson, who had made points, and Jeff saying this has been very much vetted already. But for me, I was not involved in the vetting necessarily. So hearing all the comments and the concerns, I would really like to have more time for us to look at this and maybe make some changes and additions. And it just seems like we could do that and comply with the requests of so many businesses. And of course, I have great respect for any ward councilor who has a particular problem in their ward. And for Lori, for Councilor Bryce Abrams, as an at-large councilman, I would defer to her, because here there's all these businesses that are complaining to us are from that ward. And if she really would like us to review this and maybe make exemptions for small businesses or have a little more time, that's what I would support. I just can't support it the way it is, but I understand the need for this in some ways because of what we've been through with at least one applicant. And there's a lot of work has been done by planning board folks and the committee, and who am I to say no? But I just can't support it the way it is with the comments and the respect I have for so many people, including my former student who's a lawyer, a big lawyer on Church Street. When he calls and asks me to please wait, I have high respect for him. And, the businesses that are asking, they're just asking for us to maybe make changes and to delay this in the time that we're having tremendous crisis with. Still, the pandemic is here, and we're still going through a lot of problems with the flood. So I would just ask that we have more time and maybe table or defer this to further discussion, as I think Lori has asked. Thank you, Mayor.
If that's a motion to table, I would second it.
There's no debate on a motion to table.
I would like to hear what David has to say first.
think he's trying to get back in. Mr. Fan, I see he just messaged us in the chat here that Mr. Fan did that.
Yes,
David
sir. Yes, Mayor. Councilor Cumming is trying to join back from his cell phone because he's lost his Wi-Fi at home. So please stand by.
Councilman Jacobellis.
Just a clarifying process question for Mr. Karasik. What does that mean? There's no debate on the motion to table. So I think we're just looking for a little bit of
Robert's rules are, I mean, Robert's rules on this one are pretty clear that when someone makes a motion to table, it can be made after a main motion, like the main motion is on the table. It's been on this ordinance is on the table and seconded right now. If somebody makes a motion to table it, that motion gets, and seconded, it gets voted on, period. That's what Robert's rules does not specifically says you don't debate it. Basically, in order to keep a whole long debate going on just on the issue of whether or not to put the subject aside for a while. So, I mean, of course, the council can make its own, I mean, change the rules, but I think that we have adopted Robert's rules, and there's a good reason for I wasn't trying to cut anything off. I was just trying to point out that when there's a motion to table, when a motion to table is made.
Appreciate that, but as the chair, you're not cutting anything off. There was actually not a motion to table. Somebody said
right.
if that was a motion to table, I would second it. It was not a motion to table, and that individual
That's
said,
right.
I'd like to hear from Councilman Cummings, but noted.
The mayor's right. I didn't make a motion to table. I
All right.
might, but I didn't make it yet. So
Then my advice just hangs out there as advice.
My apologies, guys.
there you go.
I'm able to get back on. Am I allowed to speak?
Councilman Cummings, you're good. You're good to go, actually. So you're queued up.
Okay. Yeah, so I think that this issue concerns me because of, I think Six Gates was really an example of that. But more importantly, I am concerned about the small businesses. And in our discussions, I harked on the kind of conversation I had when the government put out the money from the CARES Act, where they based small businesses on 2,500 to 5,000 square feet. And so one of the conditions that I thought we could consider is, you know, any businesses in some size, don't know what that square footage is, might be exempt from this, because I do think it's a lot to ask from them to, you know, have to go through these extra layers if, you know, if you're really not going to have much of a change of use. I mean, I've got, so I can look at the Fourth Ward, I can look at the South End Business District, where Dr. Barnes is going from moving his office into where the hardware store. There's going to be a significant increase in footage, but the building but whatever would come in to replace him in his current location, I don't think they would need or should have to go through this process. And I think, Mayor, we had some conversations about this, and I think what we discussed, I'm comfortable with, because I think at appropriate times we can, but I think we need something on the books. And I think some of the part that Councilor Jacobellis, he and I talked about this too, is, and my only, what I would say pushback is that this came through the EDC. And I think, and these conversations should have been much more robust in EDC. And then that way, what came out of there could have had a little bit more of the modifications that we're talking about and asking for now. But for me, what's most important, and I get it, I really am concerned about the small businesses, but I think we need to have something that's on the book so that, and with some leeway, because we can always go back into this, but for the immediate terms, I think it's important that would also come out of this, we have a little bit better communication with ordinances like this amongst ourselves, because it's like, you know, this came up a while back, and then at our last bid meeting, you know, there was considerable pushback. I listened to them, but again, I got back to what I thought is policy that we really need to consider and get something on the book. So that's where I'm at in terms of why I'm supportive of this, with, I think, what the mayor's proposing, or what our conversation was about some of my concerns for small businesses.
Thanks, Councilman.
Mayor, I just want to ask David. David, you didn't hear my comments when you were off, so I wasn't making a motion to table, but Lori thought I was. I wasn't trying to table. I wanted to hear you first. Now, what I hear you saying is there's going to be a change or amendment to this? 'Cause I can't support it as it is. Is there an amendment we're going to put in?
Well, hold on, Councilman, we're going to let everyone speak first, and then if there's amendment, there's an amendment, or whatever conversations anyone has. But anyone wishing to speak, and of course, under Robert's rules, anyone who hasn't spoken wishing to speak, and then otherwise I'll go back around to people who have already. Okay, then we'll go back around to Councilman Yacobelis.
Sorry. I don't want to move to make a single amendment because I think we need a few here. You know, the easy thing, I guess, might to make us feel better would be to say, let's do a 5,000 square foot carve out. But I think we need to talk more amongst ourselves. David, you're right. That was an EDC thing. I wasn't in that meeting. I was on vacation that week and I missed that meeting. I just would ask everyone to remember the scrutiny when we were looking at gender neutral restrooms and having to talk to all the businesses and get feedback from all the businesses on having them install $15 signs on their bathroom doors. Now we're talking about having businesses that want to change their use case or move from one location to another that had a different use case before that might be more intensive in terms of a parking requirement, having to go before the zoning board of adjustment when they never needed to do that or haven't needed to do that since 1978. So if we are agreeing that the law that's proposed is flawed and needs changes, then we should be tabling it and making changes before we pass it. So I would like to formally make a motion to table this.
It's been moved to table. Is there a second?
More discussion. I don't want discussion cut off.
It's been moved and seconded to table. Madam Clerk, call the roll, please, on tabling.
Councillor Cummings,
No.
Deputy Mayor Hurlock,
No.
Councillor Price Abrams,
Yes.
Councillor Russo,
Yes, but I want more discussion.
Councillor Schlager,
No.
Councillor Yacobelis,
Yes.
Mayor Spiller.
No. Any other questions, concerns, comments?
Can we go back to discuss this a little more? I don't like this getting
That's
cut off.
what we're doing right now, Councilman Russo.
Right,
So if you've got something to
David,
discuss, share it.
You were not on when I spoke. I said I have a couple of concerns. My main concern is to have changes made that help small businesses. I do like the part with the mechanical parking stackers being eliminated. And I do think we need to prevent what happened recently from a perspective of people getting away with no parking. I know a lot of work was done by EDC and others, but I've got, if the preponderance of calls and messages I've gotten in the last few days from people I respect in the business community are asking me to please take more time and wait. And if my council colleague from the ward that most of these businesses are in that will be impacted is asking for time to wait, then I would like us to wait and do more or make changes tonight. So I didn't know, David, it sounded like you were proposing a change, which I would consider. Do you have a change or an amendment?
No, Bob, what I suggested was, I think you should hear the discussion. I'll leave it to the mayor to discuss it, some of the things that I talked to him about. And I think there's some language and stuff that he's gonna bring forth that made me comfortable.
Okay, well, I'm waiting to hear it.
All right, seeing no other comments, and we have, to your point, Councilman Russo, there was a motion to table and that did fail. So moving on that one, I would say, quickly, just noting some of the pieces. I think this is an example of where, this is a policy discussion where there's disagreement. And quite frankly, I think that's a pretty healthy thing, but this is not something that is an out of nowhere thing. This is a long time discussion, a long time issue here in Montclair. Certainly if we want to debate, I think as my colleague Deputy Mayor noted or others noted, there's debate around Councilman, it was Mr. Jacobson actually noted around parking. Is there parking, no parking in Montclair? That is one we'll leave to, I think a lot of people to debate and discuss. However, for a long-standing time, there's been a concern around parking increases that are added with no, focus on how that happens, right? And certainly, in that ilk and with some of the actions that have happened recently, this body, I will note, yes, everybody here unanimously, right, move forward with an ordinance that specifically tries to address that. That ordinance, after duly introduced, was shared with the planning board, which overwhelmingly supported it as well, because they are the ones that are also living with this moment to moment in terms of what comes before them and what has to be approved. But there's a number of things that I think on that side of it, that's one piece, but really speaking to some of the concerns that were raised, I would argue there has been a lot of thought put into this, and the reason why I think there's comfort on the part of some in moving forward. When we talk about the example was used of a bank, and if that changed to a cafe, no, that's a perfect example. A bank right now has to have one parking space per 200 square feet. Moving to a cafe restaurant where you need one for every three seats, that would not require, right? That would not require an additional, parking need. And by looking at that math and they would be able to move forward. If it was something that required a lot of parking, a lot more parking, maybe the example that triggered a lot of this, 80 new spaces, let's say, with nowhere to park them, then yeah, that does trigger a conversation, which is what this is, right? This, I think, is the backstop of this at the end of the day with all of it. And I appreciate the word bureaucracy used a lot, and that's a word that people like to throw out when they want to try and, put a negative spin. But another word for bureaucracy is a check, right? Government does exist as a check to make sure that things are done right, whether that's be a health check with EPA, safety check with others, or it's a parking check in this case, whatever it may be, to make sure that someone has to check in with someone, in this case, zoning, or with a planning board when something's being done, to make sure that it's considered at least. Have you considered parking? Now, another great news, I'm hearing from a lot on here that there are, thousands of spaces available in Montclair to park. The good news there, it is very easy then when checking in with anybody to say there are thousands of spaces in Montclair, and we can show that, and here it is, there's no problem, right? So either there is or there isn't a parking issue. I will note, if there isn't, an easier argument to be made. Certainly that's something to note there. And for those smaller businesses that people are talking about, which we are concerned about, I am as well. By and large, the vast majority would not be even needing to go for a variance with the ordinance as is now. Checking with our parking director and her checking with zoning department as well, they're estimating very few would have to go through this process. Now that said, as Councilman Cummings noted, and certainly in the conversations I've had with many small businesses, I know many of my colleagues who are supportive of putting this in place, probably supportive because we've been living it, right? In terms of, I personally, yes, live close to the area. I know others are in zones and areas where we hear from residents, specifically a lot on parking concerns and the challenges that are caused when you add, 80 new spots with no place to park it. But that said, we've got to try and always try and listen and see if there's pieces we can do. And certainly, as I noted to those who are supportive of this, in talking with the planning department, and certainly also got to give credit to Mr. Jacobson. I know he's done a lot of work around this and conversations and some of the planning work, but looking at a capture where I think along our lines that would be helpful. An add-on of X number of spaces. I think the number that everybody's kind of looking at is an additional 4 spaces that we would look at. Again, I think the ordinance is pretty tight and clean now, but certainly open to do that. That's the nature of this game here, government, and it's compromises figuring things out. And I think we absolutely can go back and add something like that, which to Councilman Cummings' point, addresses the square footage piece by adding 4 more spaces. That's in effect a de facto, square footage grant, if you will. But also tying it to, I know that our planner with some creative ideas talked about making sure that maybe even for every one of those spaces, you add a bike component. You got to park a bike or something like that, so again, that's very Montclair, but there's, I think, a little space there. And I think that's what I would be looking at to potentially come back on and in conversations, certainly after this. But I would, go back to the premise behind this. The premise is actually that for many of us, we've looked at this and assessed this for years and years and years, seen the impact of this for years and years and years, and also, gotten the calls as well, and are looking for that balance. And if that balance is, hey, you can do it. In most cases, you can just go do it. In rare cases, you need a variance. And in some cases, you're going to have to defend a variance of 80 spaces with no parking you're providing. That doesn't seem unreasonable to find that balance there. So all things being considered, I think it does, meet that and marry those pieces together. So with that, though, again, we'll be having a couple, more even assessments and conversations with all the small businesses and everything else, as was noted. And we'll look to see if something like adding the 4 spaces is something that people would be amenable to, and see if there's a support from 4 people to get that done. With that, we do have an ordinance duly moved and seconded in front of us. And Madam Clerk, I'll ask you to call the roll.
Counselor Cummings,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hurlock,
Yes.
Counselor Price Abrams,
No.
Counselor Russo, Counselor Russo,
I don't understand what's going on. 22 years, I still don't understand. Go ahead, I voted no.
Counselor Schlager,
Yes.
Counselor Yacobelis,
No.
Mayor Spiller.
Yes. Next is Ordinance O-21-24. It's an ordinance authorizing the execution of a financial agreement between the Township of Montclair, New Jersey, and 65 Church Street Urban Renewal LLC, Block 2208, Lot 17. I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions, concerns, comments on this for introduction?
Mayor, I'd asked about this earlier. Is this the Bijou development? And I had some concerns, but Mr. Beneke did respond back to affirmative of Mr. Karasik's response. So I just want to make sure that's what this is that came to finance that we discussed. Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Price Abrams, I saw your hand up.
Thanks, Mayor. I do want to just comment in support of this. I know many of you have worked closely with the developers and others, and the redevelopment plan itself, the designation of the area anyway has gone back a long way. But I did have an opportunity to discuss with some of the principals what is expected to take place there. It looks like a lot of consideration that you all helped put together to make sure that there's some public use of the space, some setback of what they're developing, and some ability to, again, make public space. There will be public parking, actually, to the point we were just discussing, along with resident parking, tenant parking. So I think it is a dynamic new use for something that's been a very simple, empty lot. It's always about parking somehow, but I do think what's being proposed and what we are looking to pass, or on the agenda right now to pass, is something that will be an asset to the downtown area. So happy to support it.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns, comments?
Yeah, I just want to say I support this because I believe this is something that is benefiting our community. It's benefiting our area downtown with the roundabout resources and everything that's coming along with this. So I'm glad to see this progressing. Thank you, Mayor.
Sir, questions? Any other questions, concerns, comments? Seeing none, Councilman Yacobelis.
Sorry, I just, I don't have the benefit of being on the finance committee to get into the weeds in a lot of this, and I did not get a chance to take a call back from our CFO today. The part that any one of you on the finance committee or have been on the council for a while could maybe just answer for me is, I assume some analysis is done that a pilot is better than, at the actual taxes, right? So when was that analysis done, and do we have some sense of what the delta is?
Yeah, Councilman Yacobelis, I appreciate you raising that. It's a good opportunity for us to reiterate what we've done for the last 8 years now, up on 9 here, right? In that we've long-standing had a practice because of Montclair and where we're positioned right now in terms of the market and how hot we are, that any, I can almost channel my inner Mayor Jackson here, any agreement that we're moving forward on, what we do is we have our tax assessor assess what they'd be paying in taxes. We know exactly what we would be getting, estimated what we'd be getting, and we are not entering into any pilot that doesn't give us the dollars that we would be getting from that agreement, right? So what happens though, as you know, is that however, with a pilot agreement, the county share is less, right? So we get a bigger chunk of that, and they get stability. They know exactly what it is over those years, as opposed to what might generally fluctuate somewhat. So it is a win-win on both fronts in that regard. But we continue in that practice of, and that is done through the great work of our financial advisor, Mr. Beneke, does that work and kind of hammers some of those pieces out, and certainly did it once again. Kudos really coming through in this work as well in same regard. So, short answer, yes, we make sure that we've got all the different pieces in there that get us to what that number would be.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wasn't sure if there, it was some weighing of there's more of an upfront benefit and that's more advantageous short-term versus long-term. So thank you, that helps.
Any other questions, concerns, comments? Okay, hearing none, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Counselor Cummings,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hurlock,
Yes.
Counselor Price Abrams,
Yes.
Counselor Russo,
Yes.
Counselor Schlager,
Yes.
Counselor Yacovelis,
Yes.
Mayor Spiller.
Yes. Next is Ordinance O-21-25, which is refunding the bond ordinance to the Township of Montclair and the County of Essex, New Jersey, providing for the refunding of all or portion of certain general improvement refunding bond series 2014A, water utility refunding bond series 2014A, school refunding bonds 2014B, parking utility refunding bond series A, parking utility refunding bond series B of the township appropriating $21,500,000, therefore, and authorizing the issuance of the township one or more series of refunding bond in the aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $21,500,000 for financing the cost thereof, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions, concerns, or comments on this? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Counselor Cummings,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hurlock,
Yes.
Counselor Price Abrams,
Yes.
Counselor Russo,
Yes.
Counselor Schlager,
Yes.
Counselor Yacovelis,
Yes.
Mayor Spiller.
Yes. Next, we have a number of resolutions. First is Resolution R-21-180. It's a resolution determining form and other details of $10 million bonds, it's $6 million General Improvement Bond Series 2021A, and $4 million School Bond Series 2021B of the Township of Montclair and the County of Essex, New Jersey, and providing for their sale, and I so move.
Second.
Questions, concerns, comments?
I think
Seeing none. Councilman Yacovelis.
I just want to prompt for the public benefit, just a once over from either you or Deputy Mayor Hurlock or Mr. Stafford on, why we're doing this. I understand why we're doing this. I had a conversation with their CFO about this, but I think the public would just benefit from hearing that rationale.
Would you like me to speak to that, Mayor?
Sure.
Periodically, the township issues bond anticipation notes or bonds to pay for expenditures incurred that were authorized by the governing body through the adoption of capital ordinances. It is planned to issue bonds totaling $10 million for various recent general improvement and school improvement ordinances. This sale requires the governing body to adopt two resolutions. The first would combine the general obligation and school obligation bonds into a single issue, and the second would authorize the mayor and chief financial officer to enter into and execute a purchase contract on behalf of the township with the underwriter in the form satisfactory to bond counsel to sell those bonds at a purchase price determined by various parameters set forth by the state's local finance board. Item D, that's before you now, would be that second resolution determining the form and other details of those $10 million in bonds, consisting of $6 million in general improvement bonds and $4 million in school bonds.
So in layman's terms, we're refinancing debt to get a better rate. If it's a stretch, you don't have to agree with
That's a bit of a
that.
stretch. It's basically in essence, we're redoing it. Yes, we're refunding. Yes.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Counselor Cummings,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hurlock,
Yes.
Counselor Price Abrams,
Yes.
Counselor Russo,
Yes.
Counselor Schlager,
Yes.
Counselor Yacovelis,
Yes.
Mayor Spiller.
Yes. Next is Resolution R-21-181, resolution providing for the combination of $6 million aggregate principal amount of general improvement bonds, $4 million aggregate principal amount of school bonds to the Township of Montclair, County of Essex, to a single issues general improvement bond, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions, concerns, comments? Mr. Stafford spoke to this already, and Madam Clerk?
Counselor Cummings,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hurlock,
Yes.
Counselor Price Abrams,
Yes.
Counselor Russo,
Yes.
Counselor Schlager,
Yes.
Counselor Yacovelis,
Yes.
Mayor Spiller.
Yes. Next is Resolution R-21-182, awarding contract for SHI to SHI for Township of Montclair website design and services in accordance with the New Jersey Cooperative Purchasing Alliance of Bergen County. I so move.
Second.
I have
It's
a
been
question.
Moved and seconded. Councilwoman Schlager?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just curious, I didn't see it. Is this the same company that does the website now, or is this a new company?
No, ma'am, it would be a new company altogether. And the reason for that is because our system, our website that was launched in 2017 is suffering from significant issues, and not the least of which are what they call latency issues, which frankly is that the website freezes and it buries items so that items that we want prominently placed are not are what they call invisible to users. So our IT and communications team went out, found this, and analyzed it for our purposes and believe it to be the best for us.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilwoman Price Abrams?
Thanks, Mayor. Mr. Stafford, if I may ask if the members of the Municipal Services Committee who have the Communications Subcommittee, I think I can speak for my colleagues to say that we would be open and happy to provide any consultation as if new systems are being developed. Maybe we can provide some feedback. We've been in some conversation with Dr. Woke about some of the current things, but really have just barely begun to, talk about a better user interface and things that very likely are possible with the new system. And I'll speak for myself, but I think they will step up to agree that we would be happy in some combination to be a sounding board if we could be helpful.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think, Councilwoman, that's a great idea, and certainly, as I'm sure you do that work, you solicit from all of us some ideas or anything else, because I think as we have these opportunities to kind of redo a website, we all might have an idea of, hey, can we tweak this or add that or some other function that we may have seen somewhere else that might be maybe can be incorporated.
Thanks.
Any other Councilman Yacovelis?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mrs. Stafford, and to the communications staff for answering my questions. I think it was yesterday or today. I had a chance to look at some of the other websites that this company does. So if folks want to know, Palo Alto, California is one of them. Morris County, New Jersey is another. I think you'll find a really good user experience. But to Councilwoman Price Abrams' point too, I think there's definitely a role for us to play in terms of public feedback and conveying that feedback and some of our own thoughts in terms of just the user experience and, from a constituent relations, obviously from putting forward information, from searchability, all those things, I think will be just by nature set up well with having a better interface and with the talent of our staff doing the work to design and put that together. But I would just echo what Councilor Price Abrams said in terms of the role of the committee, potentially bringing in some external as well as our own feedback to the process. So thanks.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Counselor Cummings,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hurlock,
Yes.
Counselor Price Abrams,
Yes.
Counselor Russo,
Yes.
Counselor Schlager,
Yes.
Counselor Yacovelis,
Yes.
Mayor Spiller.
Yes. Next is Resolution R-21-183. It's a resolution authorizing the award of a non-fair and open contract to purchase one police vehicle for the Montclair Police Department in the amount of $36,624.35. I so move.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Questions, concerns, comments? Councilman Yacovelis.
Sorry, I did my homework. I just want to point out that, and Mrs. Stafford, I think, I don't know if you want to reiterate any of this, but we've lost a few police vehicles due to accidents, due to Ida. And it's my understanding from our conversations that we are receiving money from the insurance companies for what our total losses for a few vehicles. And in this case, the funds that we're receiving in reimbursement from those insurance companies is more than enough to cover this particular acquisition price. There will be additional costs later in terms of upfitting vehicles. And of course, if we do need to acquire any additional vehicles as a result of losses. Is that all accurate, Mrs. Stafford?
It is.
Thank you.
Any other questions, concerns, comments? And just for fairness to my colleagues, I know that a few of them had reached out to me and Mr. Stafford to get the same information, Councilman Yacovelis. So just to be fair, I think they were up on it too. Madam Clerk, please.
Counselor Cummings,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hurlock,
Yes.
Counselor Price Abrams,
Yes.
Counselor Russo,
Yes.
Counselor Schlager,
Yes.
Counselor Yacovelis,
Yes.
Mayor Spiller.
Yes. Resolution R-21-184 is a resolution awarding emergency contract to Environmental Climate Control to replace the cooling tower for the police headquarters. I so move.
Second.
Questions, concerns, comments? Councilman Yacovelis.
Just a comment, look, this is obviously an emergency and had to get done. This is the equivalent to me of having an old car when I was younger, and you just have that old car, you can't afford to get a new car, and things just keep going wrong and you keep fixing it and spending money, and it doesn't actually, there's no ROI in that. So just to, that we need to be more conscious of our timeline in terms of updating some of these municipal facilities, including this police department, which is falling apart. So it's painful to have to spend $74,000 on a cooling tower for a building that, overall needs an overhaul overall, and that, may not even be in use in the future if we decide to relocate the police department into a larger municipal complex, which I hope we will be doing within the next few years, because our cops cannot continue to work. I know you would all agree with this, in the conditions of that building.
Yep, Councilman Yacovelis, I don't think you get any objection here. I think our record shown, we're pretty proud of it. We've been able to kind of strategically work and use partnerships and other things that have developed. For example, getting a significant amount of dollars for one of those parking decks and some of the pieces we've been able to leverage in town. And I know that we've all got a mindful eye on how we can leverage different pieces and look at opportunities and on the horizon to try and get something done for improvement of some of our infrastructure or buildings for sure. But thank you. Any other questions, concerns, comments? Madam Clerk.
Counselor Cummings,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hurlock,
Yes.
Counselor Price Abrams,
Yes.
Counselor Russo,
Yes.
Counselor Schlager,
Yes.
Counselor Yacovelis,
Yes.
Mayor Spiller.
Yes. Next is, excuse me, next is Resolution R-21-185, which is a resolution amending the non-fair and open contract to Hendricks Appraisal for Tax Court Appraisal Services 2021. I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions, concerns, comments?
I do have a question on this one.
Councilman Yacovelis.
Just what what is driving, I mean, I know we had budgeted 85, the net new here is for 65 for a total of 150. What is driving that increased cost? Is it related to COVID? Is it related to the resulting recession because of COVID, just higher volume? What's driving, like, why would we be so off in terms of anticipating what the costs were when we set this initially?
Well, first of all, we try to be as judicious as we can with respect to the initial not to exceed amount, knowing that during the course of the year, if necessary, we can come back to the governing body. We try to budget under rather than over. You're correct in your supposition that it's the pandemic. There's no question whatsoever that the conditions caused by the pandemic are leading to a significant number of tax appeals. However, in addition to that, we have what I think is fair to say and describe as a tax court appeal judge who is aggressive. And by that, what I mean is the court has issued a significant number of case management orders that have accelerated tax appeals more than could be possibly reasonably anticipated. And so that's causing a significant amount of work on the part of the professional to prepare for litigation, because it is absolutely to the township's benefit. It is critical that we contest every appeal because our assessments are right on the money. And so therefore, in order, unfortunately, whether a case actually goes or not, and if a case goes, usually we win, but to get to that point, we have to prepare. And so when you have an aggressive court filing case management orders that require ready for trial, Your Honor, we have to be ready for trial.
Thank you. Are these mostly residential, or are they commercial, or is it a blend? The appeals we're seeing.
I think it's fair to say. Yeah, please.
Yeah, in the tax court, mostly they're commercial appeals. And our results, by the way, have really been excellent. The tax assessor's given us spreadsheets basically of the total amount under appeal, which are hundreds of millions of dollars of properties. And the total amount of a change in the assessment has been relatively minuscule. So we've been very happy with the results. But yes, the judge has put on what we call a rocket docket. He's moving things to trial very rapidly.
I think I just want to take that moment, Mr. Stafford, and kudos to my colleagues from years back. I know when we brought in our current tax assessor, that was the goal, and the focus was to have somebody who was constantly getting this spot on. I think we succeeded in that. I know all the different techniques he uses. I remember, getting that explanation when we first brought him in, and really just a testament now, going from where we used to lose, a lot of those to where we win them all is really indicative of, having the right person there. So please pass along our appreciation to him as well.
Will do.
Any other questions, concerns, comments? Councilwoman Price Abrams.
Thanks, Mayor. Manager, perhaps you could just explain under what circumstances the fair and open process is required of us, and on what the not, in other words, it sounds odd to have this in the title, but I know it's a term of art, so I ask you to explain it just for anybody paying attention. I understand this is our consultant. We've already used this firm, this team, but when does the fair and open piece trigger and when does it not, if you wouldn't mind?
It is a New Jersey local public contracts law term of art, as you say. It's anything basically that's not put out to bid. So any professional services contract, anything under the threshold, anything that's not put out to bid. It's not how I would have chosen to have the reg, but I'm not on the DLGS.
Yeah, I should just add, we have a new qualified purchasing agent who's fairly aggressive about using the statutory and correct language. Scrupulous is better than aggressive. He's scrupulous, which is why he's putting this in, and it's correct and accurate. So I certainly can't criticize. I think it's a good thing to have, but it isn't like it sounds.
Well, maybe it could be in quotes, fair and open, because then it would be the term of art versus sounding it's not fair. So anyway, for consideration.
Any other questions, concerns, comments? Okay, Madam Clerk.
Counselor Cummings,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hurlock,
Yes.
Counselor Price Abrams,
Yes.
Counselor Russo,
Yes.
Counselor Schlager,
Yes.
Counselor Yacobelis,
Yes.
Mayor Spiller.
Yes. Next is Resolution R-21-186. Councilwoman Schlager, would you mind doing the honors?
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Mayor. Whereas invoices against the Township of Montclair in favor of the following persons for the amounts set opposite their respective names have been received, duly audited, and found correct. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the Township of Montclair in the County of Essex that said invoices be and they are hereby ordered paid, and that checks be drawn by the Finance Department to the order of such persons for the amounts respectively and hereinafter stated on the schedule attached hereto and made a part hereof. This bill list is dated September 21st, year of 2021, for $8,734,306.10, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions, concerns, or comments? Seeing none, Madam Clerk. Councilman Yacobelis.
Sorry, Mayor, I do. I don't have page numbers on mine, so I don't want to make this incredibly complicated. So, Mr. Stafford, I'm sorry, there's no page numbers on here, so I don't know how to tell you what page I'm on, but I'll just ask and hope that it's easy to find. There's one charge, $15,000, which I know is the grant writing services for the Aubrey Group. If you can just tell us, you know, I know that was the retainer that we pay for the year of service, but what projects is that grant writer working on? Has that person, that entity, started working on sourcing any specific grants?
That fee, that invoice is for 5 flat fee grants. I don't remember what they were off the top of my head, so we'll have to get you a list of what those grant applications were.
Okay. There's another charge for Northeast Sweepers and Rentals for $2,700 to repair refurbished sweeper. I think I remember hearing that the sweeper was down. So it was this, I guess, to get it back and running. And does that mean the street sweeper is back up and running?
As far as I know, it was. The answer to your question is yes, and it was up and running before the remnants of Hurricane Ida came through. It has done a significant amount of work since then, so I have every reason to believe it is.
So hopefully it won't be in for repair again. There's another Shark Transportation, it's called. It just says removal and disposal of clean, and then it cuts off. It's $29,950. Again, I just apologize. There's no page numbers for me to reference, but it's about 2/3 of the way through the packet. Again, Shark Transportation. It just says removal and disposal of clean FI, $29,950.
Unfortunately, that's not an item that I know off the top of my head, so I will try to find it.
Okay, sorry to put you on the spot. Ordinarily, I'd ask you this over email over the weekend, but I had my birthday this weekend and didn't get to do a lot of this stuff until today, so my apologies.
Mr. Stafford, I can help with a couple of those grant requests, if you will. Grants submitted to date, there's one for congressionally directed spending out of Senator Menendez's office. Grants in process, COPS Crisis Intervention Team Implementation Grant, $250,000. Pool Safety Grant, $400,000. The NEA grant for arts projects, that would be $30,000. Grants recommended: opioid affected youth and initiative assistant, the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Program, Collaborative Approach to Preventing Hate Crimes Demo, 21st Century Redevelopment Challenge, Municipal Aid, Bikeways, Safe Streets, Transit Village, NEA grants for art projects, Body-worn camera policy and implementation program, urban agriculture and innovative production, NEA Our Town, and the USDA Office of Urban Agricultural Competitive Grant. Again, those last 8 were grants recommended that we take a look at. The 3 prior to that are the grants that are in progress, and the grants already submitted is the one to Senator Menendez's office. Okay?
Thank you, Mrs. Scantlebury.
You got it.
Thank you, Mayor. That was all.
Great. Anyone else with questions, concerns, comments?
I'm sorry,
Council.
before there's more comments or questions, let me just say the Shark Transportation, I believe the extension of that line would be removal and disposal of clean fill, and it being for the water utility, it's almost certainly in connection with a dig of some sort where we were obligated to have clean fill transported and probably tested, et cetera. If I'm not correct on that, I will certainly update you.
Thank you, Mrs. Stafford.
Councilwoman Price Abrams.
Thanks. I did just take note on really maybe the 3rd or so page from before it switches in the water capital budget, I should say. The last one has to do with the Lorraine Well Treatment Facility improvement. It's $181,000. So maybe just explain for us, was that because of Superstorm Ida or just something that had to be done? In any case, it's obviously a significant expenditure. I'm sure it was quite necessary, but
I don't think that has anything to do with the remnants of Hurricane Ida. I believe that's the installation and getting ready, preparation for getting ready of the carbon vessel that will go there.
carbon vessel?
Yeah, that's to treat the water before when it comes in before it goes out.
Got it. Thank you.
And I was correct. The removal and disposal of clean fill was from the Water Bureau. Absolutely. So.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands. So Madam Clerk?
Counselor Cummings,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Herlock,
Yeah.
Counselor Price Abrams,
Yes.
Counselor Russo,
Yes.
Counselor Schlager,
Yes.
Counselor Yacobelis,
Yes.
Mayor Spiller.
Yes. Next, we have a number 5 of items for discussion. Mr. Stafford, would you please?
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 1, as you know, applicants for development projects are required to deposit funds in escrow. The projects listed on item 1's Schedule A have been determined to be substantially complete, have been denied, or have been withdrawn, and all relevant fees have been satisfied. And accordingly, there appears to be no further basis to retain those escrow deposits listed thereon. This resolution would authorize their release and would direct our chief financial officer to issue checks for same to the applicable developers. Item number 2 would be a resolution that, given that the state of emergency in connection with the COVID-19 pandemic continues to exist, would extend the temporary moratorium through and including December 31 of 2021. Next, the township, as required by statute, had made an annual audit of its books, accounts, and financial transactions of the year ending December 31 of 2020. The New Jersey Administrative Code requires that the governing body certify by resolution to the local finance board of the state of New Jersey that all governing body members have reviewed at a minimum the sections of the annual audit entitled Comments and Recommendations. This resolution in item number 3 and the applicable group affidavit would so certify. Next, on January 19 of 2021, by resolution R-21-008, this governing body authorized the execution of a professional services agreement with Santarcangelo Law, LLC, for representation in abandoned and vacant property matters. The not to exceed amount of the agreement was $65,000, and given the amount of work reasonably anticipated for the calendar year, the amount authorized and approved in our 2021 budget for such legal services was $115,000. At present, this professional's work has resulted in billing approaching the reference not to exceed amount, and to enable this critical work to continue, recommendation is made to, and the resolution in item number 4 would authorize the amending of that not to exceed amount of the firm's professional services agreement for this year by $50,000 for a new total contract amount of $115,000. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Well, I would say this, Mr. Stafford, another one of those ones. Let's give a big thank you. I know that, I remember bringing them in a few years back, and the work that they've done really to help manage that work. Another one of those night and day scenarios from what we were dealing with before. So, kudos there, and please note the great work they're doing, and thank you, because they do a wonderful job, and it's we've really been able to manage our really minimize and then upkeep properly in many cases our abandoned and vacant properties. So thank you.
I'll certainly relay that.
Thank you. We've got another item, our item 5. It's a board of school estimate discussion. I know we've got the chair on. Mr. Chair, turn over to you to briefly note that piece. Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I greatly appreciate that. It came to my attention very recently that we had one of our council members on the Board of School Estimate resign. We thank Councilwoman Schlager for her service and dedication to many of the school issues, but also her service on the Board of School Estimate. I did finally receive Friday afternoon a request from the superintendent to start to plan some of the meetings for the Board of School Estimate, given the timeliness of this request and what is proposed on the capital side. I think it is imperative that we get someone in that position from the council very quickly. I know it's on for discussion for the 29th. I'd like to consider it this evening so that I can get back to the superintendent and schedule him.
If that's a motion, I second it.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Price Abrams.
Good at that. She did mine before too.
She did mine quicker though, Bob. I'm sorry.
But I didn't even make one. She jumped the gun.
I was literally going to say that is Councilman Price Abrams. You're on a roll as the second time you seconded a non-motion, I believe, at this point. So.
I only asked if it was a motion.
Yes,
Do we need
I got
motion?
it. I got it. We're all having a little fun here. But okay, so with that, I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. Would anyone like to make a motion? And the motion isn't just we'd have to do it. So would anyone like to make a motion?
Can we discuss this first?
You have to have a motion to discuss. So Councilwoman Schlager.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would like to, at this time, having thought about this, I would like to make a motion to appoint Councilman David Cummings to this position.
I would second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Now it's open for debate, questions, concerns, comments. Councilman Russo.
Yeah, all I want to ask our town attorney, I guess, is this, or maybe everybody should chime in on this. Didn't we talk about maybe not doing anything about the budget requests because there could be an election in 5 weeks, I think it is, that could make this seat vacant? I'm all for this David's appointment. I'm just saying, what is the impact of the election in 5 weeks that could change the whole nature of the Board of School Estimate, which I know a lot about because I served as chairman over 4 years myself. So I know how important this is, and I feel it's good that we have representation from the 4th Ward if David gets on there, but I hate to see it be short-lived. So what is the impact of the election, Ira, I guess?
Well, Counselor,
Ira, please, Chair, hold on a second. I will note this, Councilman. I think we are, and I know you do agree with this, and I won't speak for the Chair of Board of School Estimate, but I'm sure he would agree. I think our plan and our obligation and our charge is to proceed under whatever our rules are now, under whatever our charges are now, which this is in effect right now. And I think our charge as a council is to fill that seat, check in terms of appointment nomination just made. We'll see how that goes. And secondly, then the Board of School Estimate will do their charge. And at any point, at any juncture, if there is a change in that, the second those votes are counted, if it remains as is, we've been doing our due diligence and it would continue. If it changes, it would change immediately. That would be that would be what happens. So we have to, and it's only appropriate to proceed as we would, and we will. forthwith. And, from there, we will see what happens in that election. But certainly I will let Mr. Krasik speak to specifically the election piece. But, should it change, then it would change it immediately. But until then, we have a charge, and we're doing our job, and then the Board of School Estimate will do its.
I couldn't have said it any better. Before Mr. Karasik jumps in, I couldn't have said it any better myself, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Oh, well, that's what I
Sorry,
was
Mr.
going to say, Deputy Mayor Hurlock. But in any case, right now, the council's obligated to fill the seat. So regardless of what happens in the future, given the fact that there's been a request to have a meeting, the council should vote on a replacement.
All right, I'm just asking, because I don't want to see this be a short-lived role.
Well,
So we should go ahead and do whatever we have to do tonight, just hopefully, well, I have my own opinions on the election, so I'm not going to get into that. Go ahead. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, concerns, Councilman Yacobelis?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple thoughts and concerns. First, I'd like it to be known that I also raised my hand to volunteer for this position and would like to be considered as well. And maybe that is a reason to take the week until next week, although I would hate to be the holdup for the Board of School Estimates getting to meet and starting to address, some of the work that's been requested by the district. Councilor Russo brings up, the election and what may happen with appointed versus elected school board. For anybody who wants to keep it an appointed board, I do think continuing to move forward without any at-large, including the mayoral representation on the Board of School Estimates, is problematic because it excludes, by nature, any one particular ward at any given time from having direct elected representation on the Board of School Estimates. So the Board of School Estimates is typically supposed to have the mayor as the chair. We've clearly designated Deputy Mayor Hurlock as the chair. Deputy Mayor Hurlock is the elected representative of the first ward. And Councilor Price Abrams, another member, is the elected representative of the third ward. And up until recently, Councilwoman Schlager was the elected representative of the second ward, meeting that we've gone the last year without having an elected rep of the fourth ward on the Board of School Estimates. And the proposal to put Councilor Cummings, which I would of course personally support, I think is problematic in that now we will have no direct elected representation from the second ward on the Board of School Estimates. And so I just don't feel good about that. I think if it can't be you as mayor on there, as chair, then at the very least, Councilor Russo or myself as an at-large representative, somebody that the people in all four wards elect to office, sits in one of those seats so that all four wards are represented with a direct elected representative at all times. So I think it's problematic, and I think it undermines the integrity of that institution. It has nothing to do with any of you or any of us as individuals, and that's a concern of mine. So I just hope we can consider either myself or Councilor Russo in the absence of your ability to be on there, Mayor, because I think having an at-large person is pretty critical.
So, Mr. Mayor, I want to respond to that because I think what's most important is we have somebody who understands our school system. And having participated and gone through the school district as a student, also had 3 kids go through the school system, know every step as a former board member and understanding, the tracks of every magnet of every elementary school. I think we really need, and understanding the bows and how it actually works. I think experience trumpets voting. I think we need to make sure that as we move forward, that the business at hand, which may be short-lived, we can get to it. Councilor Yacobelis often says about the fact that, he feels like being an at-large member as someone voted by everyone gives some kind of increased activity and stuff like that, where I think, again, what's most important with things like this is that we have experience. And so I would put my experience on the bows with trumpet him and Councilor Russo. In fact, really everyone on this council. So I think if we want to talk about how do we form a body that really has to take care of a very important function, someone who has been through the school system from kindergarten through high school, put 3 kids through it, one a recent graduate, another one a senior who's about to graduate from college, and a freshman who received a full scholarship. I know how this system works, from the busing to the tracking that we've had, to the issues with the achievement gap, to going through the battles of what we went through when I was on the board. So I think that there's an historical perspective that can be very useful to the Bows. And I think that I accept this nomination. I think Councilor Deputy Mayor Herlock, I appreciate some of the conversations we've had. I've got great relationships with the superintendent as well as many administrators and those on the board of Ed. So as I gently try to explain why I think I'm the best person for this, I say that humbly from roots alone, that this district has meant a lot to me, and there's really nothing else I can pull out of this school district. The only thing I can do is give back, considering all it has done for me, my family, which I can go to an extended family that goes back to the 40s. So when I look at the Montclair public school system and representing it, I think it's very important that we have people who understand it and work hard for it and have a track history of being a part of this community. Thank you.
Mayor, I just want to add something.
Just one second, Councilman Russo. I want to see if anybody who hasn't spoken would like to add something. I'll absolutely come back to anyone who has already. Anyone else wishing to speak on the motion? We have a motion here. Anyone else wishing to speak on the motion? Deputy Mayor, did you speak on it already? I don't want to mix it up. So did you speak?
I don't think
I
did. I think I moved it. I don't think I spoke on it. So if you don't mind, if I could just speak. And I appreciate Councilman Cummings' comments, and we've known each other for a long time, and I'm not running. But I would say, David, while I didn't attend the school system, and I respect that you did, I also put 2 kids through. And I've been on the Board of School Estimate for 10 years. So I just want to put that out there as well. But I appreciate your comments, and I respect your service. I know we've worked together over the years with the PTAs and with fundraisers, and Mount Hebron, now Buzz Aldrin, etc. So thank you.
Yep, and I think that just to note the beauty of this thing here and why you have a motion before you comment. We're looking at a motion here, right? And we've got a name that's been moved forward, and we're discussing and debating yes or no on that motion. Unless it's another hand, I'm going to go to Councilman Russo again. All right, Councilman Russo.
Mayor, I just want to say I support putting David on the board. I was saying I hope it's not short-lived, but David, just to tease you a little, I've had 4 years experience chairing the board. One thing I'd like to say, and I know this is not needed by you because you know what we've gone through, but when I was mayor, the Board of School Estimate added $900,000 to the budget. Last year I was mayor, and the Board of School Estimate gave a great, investment of $900,000 to have solar panels on all of our buildings. In the next Board of School Estimate, when I was defeated and had to leave, took the whole $900,000 out, very short-sighted savings. When I came in as mayor, I was informed by the superintendent, who was a great superintendent at the time, Michael Esnato, that the previous Board of School Estimate had taken out $700,000 in healthcare insurance costs for our teachers and board employees just to save money at one point on the taxes politically, really. And I had to restore it as the new chair of the Board of School Estimate. So I just want to make those 2 experiences clear, because I know you and Bill and Lori are on there now, and I know Robin's done a good job. And it's just such an important board. It's such an important, part of our government under this system now, which I support this system. It's so important, we don't do things that are short-sighted or maybe mistakes that are driven by immediate political interests. What happened to me as mayor was terrible, because I came in and had to restore the $700,000 and increase taxes that year by 1 point. And then when I left, I tried to make an investment. This is going back almost 20 years. Investment in solar energy at the time was the big thing coming up, and it was taken out by the next Board of School Estimate. So let's do what we can to help our schools, and by putting a lot of money and resources forward for investment for the future. Thank you, David. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you, sir. Councilman Yacobelis, unless there's a new person who hasn't spoken. Okay, Councilman Yacobelis.
Thanks, Mayor. This is always awkward, right? Like to campaign sort of openly for something, I think is when we're at a team of 7 is just awkward by nature. I will say, if this is a question of whether or not Councilor Cummings has the merit or background or experience to do the job, there's no question, as far as I'm concerned. I do want to offer up, and maybe this is can be fodder for future thinking, that I do think different experience is valuable too. I may not, and I certainly don't have the experience of going through the Montclair public schools, and I don't have kids in the schools, but I do have years of experience working for Fortune 500 companies, working for C-suite executives directly, overseeing budgets upwards of $550 million, and being trusted with enormous power and responsibility with things like that, leading large teams, leading complex projects in both the private sector and the public sector. And sometimes that having that outsider's perspective, I think, is important and can add value. And I think, overall, sort of where we are with our school system today, I think begs for a different perspective. And I don't necessarily have a horse in the race in terms of whether or not we should have an appointed or elected school board. I think that's a very difficult question for this community to have to ponder over the next few weeks. And I don't want to come down on one side or the other irresponsibly. But I do think we're at a place where our school district is in a crisis, and there's a crisis of confidence in the district. We are at the lowest enrollment since 1999, as far as I read in recent news reports. And that tells me we've got quite a crisis of confidence in the district. And so I do think the circumstances beg for a different kind of leadership, a different perspective. If the majority wants to go along with a different nominee tonight, that's great. And I, again, will support that person on merit. But I do think we're missing an opportunity to potentially have different perspective. And I think critically to the integrity of the institution of the Board of School Estimate, if we make an appointment tonight that includes an additional ward counselor and no at-large representation or the mayor, then effective immediately, any resident in the 2nd Ward of Montclair will not have direct elected representation on the Board of School Estimate, as any resident in the 4th Ward for the last year hasn't had. And I don't think that's okay in terms of how our government is structured or meant to function. And I think this would be, I just think it would be a shame. That's all. Thank you.
I just want to tie a knot on this, because I think it's important to understand that the Board of School Estimate really has no say in the leadership of the district. It deals with funding. And it's also to my real, how do I say this tactically, is it just makes no sense to think that, because the biggest issue in our township has been, in terms of the school board or the Board of Education, has been a turnover in leadership at the top. And when you don't have the continuity at the top, you get dysfunction. And I think that's one of the reasons why the board gave Dr. Pons a 5-year contract. So he was there to be able to be there to add some stability. And what's getting lost in here is this man walked into a position where COVID hit and no one was prepared for that. So I don't think we can really assess the work of the school district under the conditions that they've faced the last 2 years. And I mean, the schools are open now, and the whole organization, the team that he's put in place, hasn't really had a chance to actually govern a district. They've been fighting a pandemic. And so I think it's not fair for us to question their capability under these circumstances that he walked into. So again, that goes to my point of thinking of really having some historical perspective, and knowing that when you go through 2 interim superintendents and 3 full-time superintendents, there's no opportunity for continuity to exist. And therefore, you know, I've always thought that, you know, the fish rots from the head. And if you don't have a strong head or a head that's given a chance to work, things will crumble. And there's no doubt that our school district needs some support and needs some help. But I'm not about to say that it is failing. And when you look at the numbers and you mentioned enrollment, you know, that's one of those things I like to see. Where is enrollment at the end of the year? Because a lot of parents did pull kids out of school because of COVID and the way that the district was not able to get back into school early. However, I think if you look at our elementary schools and our middle schools over the course of the next 6 to 8 months, let's see where enrollment is there. And the township itself, again, I believe in our school district. I believe that and I believe in that from the standpoint of, like I said, from the experience of my children and their friends. And I see where all their friends are now. And so therefore, I would not say we have a failing district. I say we have a district that Bill, I'm sure your kids are doing very well in college. I think Lori Price, Miss Abrams, same for you. So Robin, I think that the results are there, and there's not much that we can do again as a BOS other than find strategic ways to support them. And which goes to the point, I think, and Councilor Jacobellis, we had this conversation. You know, when you mentioned the $60 million, that was somewhat alarming to me in the way you said it. I think you've since kind of come back to understand that what you meant to say was that we need to be in a position to support the districts financially. But the way that you said it was, we need to add $60 million and we need to pass it because they need it. That's how it came off. And so what I think that as a finance committee member, we've already tried to have discussions of asking the board, what do you need? What do you need? And let's figure out a way to get this to you responsibly. And, you know, Councilor Hurlock, you can attest to this for the fact that, you know, we've never received anything. There's always been talk, but not hardcore, which is legally, we cannot move forward until we actually see what is your plan. So that type of history and that type of knowledge, I think, is very important, especially at this critical time that we face.
All right. Okay. Mr. Deputy Mayor, I'm gonna go back around to you, but I'm gonna really kind of keep it tight and germane here on the motion.
I'm tight and germane, Mr. Mayor. You know me, I'm tight and germane if I'm anything.
Right. Fair enough.
I have
Go ahead.
just a couple of things Mr. Cummings, Councilor Cummings had addressed, which I think are important to remember. You know, statutorily, the Board of School Estimate under a Type 1 school district has a very, very limited role. We set the tax levy. We can't even say, okay, take $500 out of the textbooks, you know, for the Spanish class and put it into the English class. That's not our purview at all. We set the tax levy, and we have been asking for information, and Councilor Price Abrams and Councilor Schlager can attest to this, as can former Mayor Jackson and former Councilor McMahon, for information about how, you know, what do you need? How can we get it to you? And as of this day, today, I still don't have any papers on what the ask is and what the supporting document is. But that's what we're here to work through. That's why we're making the appointment tonight, and we're not waiting. And to Councilor Cummings' point, which is a very good one, I've been on the Board of School Estimate now for 9 years, going on 10. I've served with 6 superintendents and 7 business administrators. That's ridiculous. So that's a fact. So to Councilor Cummings' point about continuation of leadership, it's well taken, and it's absolutely been an issue, and we look forward in whatever capacity to work with the Board of Ed on a lot of these issues. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? No. Abstentions?
I'll abstain because I don't want it to be personal or feel personal, but I have just issues with what I express in terms of representation.
Okay, motion carries. I will just note at the end of that, and Councilman Akbel's a little bit to your thing, hopefully, note this as well, that in our form of government too, the actions of the Board of School Estimate do not just go into effect. This full council then has to vote on what the Board of School Estimate moves forward. So everyone on here, every ward, every one of us get a chance to vote on that, on what the Board of School Estimate moves out of their work and brings to us. So that's something to note there. Certainly also will recognize and note, we've all seen the challenges that have, been going on in terms of look, even just the flooding to get schools open and everything else. It seems like I know many people, with half a smile have been saying, hey, when are these locusts coming? Because it's been everything thrown at us. And certainly Councilman Cummings, as you noted, a pandemic and everything else, and they're trying to get a new super in the middle of that and everything. So I want to say, big appreciation to the schools for doing all that they can and everything they have been able to do, and everybody involved. I know it's never perfect. People I know go in with good intentions. I don't think anyone has a bad intention. And I know working very hard to keep our schools, the schools that you went through, David, right? And the schools that have Robin's kids and Lori's kids and Bill's kids doing really well. And, these are the schools that people like me who have 2 young kids are here for. And are supportive of and are excited to have their kids enrolled in. And certainly I know that when you look at our market and how hot we are, it continues to be a draw because people know that we've got a great community, and that includes great public schools. But that said, we'll continue that work, and we have now populated as appropriate and legally so our Board of School Estimate. So thank you, Councilman Slager. I know it was noted already from the chairman for your service on that. We thank you. And certainly Councilman Cummings, we wish you well in the work ahead and in joining our colleague and deputy mayor and also our council colleague, Price Abrams. So to you all, thank you. With that,
Mr. Mayor, excuse me,
yes.
may I just say that tomorrow I'll work with the clerk and we'll prepare a written resolution conforming to the statute.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Moving, Mr. Stafford, any comments?
I have nothing further tonight, Mayor. Thank you, though.
Okay, very well. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mayor. I have one thing. The voter registration deadline for the general election is the 12th of October, and this office will remain open to receive registration forms until 9 p.m., October 12th. That's it from me.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Mr. Deputy Manager?
I have nothing, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Did I go to you, Mr. Karasik? yet?
No, I was just going to say that you heard it from some of the callers that we did have an argument in the appellate division today on the rent control petition. And just to make it clear, 3 judges heard the argument. We weren't arguing with the judges, but with each other. There's no way to know how they're going to decide. So when they will decide, they'll issue an opinion, and then I'll report that to the council.
All right. Well, by all accounts, it seems like many of the callers we're appreciative of your arguments, Ira, and certainly we know that you did justice to the work for sure. Thank you. Councilman Cummings.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be brief as I possibly can, but I want to still acknowledge the loss of Mr. Pelham. That is huge, but in the interim, MNDC has placed Reverend Craig Dunn as interim executive director, and I think Craig, again, is an individual of high esteem, a great person who will really take the organization moving forward. And former at-large Councilor Roger Terry is taking over Mr. Pelham's spot as NAACP president. So I think both organizations will have will move forward with some great people in their place. I want to give a shout out that on October 2nd, first Saturday, the Barber twins having a bike ride starting out of Glenfield Park. They did this last year. They're going to be having some health people there to look at doing some vaccinations. Going to have they're going to have a bunch of rides. It's just going to be a great event, and I think the township should get behind it as much as it can. Meaning not us as counselors, but we should show up, but really give them, the support that they need. And I know they sent the route up to the police department to get that set up. Last year's event, Mr. Mayor, you were there. It's going to be packed. And this is a way to really support 2 of Montclair's really, really great athletes, but really, really good people. Update, Lori and I are working really hard on the committee and commissions that we were tasked with. I think we've got a kind of like a working frame. And to the question earlier of the landlord tenant, you know, we kind of prioritize those because we want to really get moving on that particular one earlier. Found out from Ira's assistant Camilla, we have 200 cases in court right now, landlord tenant from Montclair. So I think it's important that we look at that. And I'll close out by saying that I'm very happy that brother and brother, sister called in today, because I think the whoever the owners are, 11 Pine Street, should really have a true understanding of the impact that location has had on the community and the students that it served. So whatever we can do to just let them know that that's a very important piece of fabric to this township, we should. So I thank you for this. I look forward to working with Councilor Price Abrams and Deputy Mayor Herlock on the bows. I think we can get some good things done. And I think, you know, as we move forward, I look to make sure that everybody here is well represented in ideas and thoughts as we go forward in that area. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Price Abrams.
Thanks, Mayor. And thanks, Council Cummings, you know, for just referencing the work we're doing together. I do look forward to continuing with you and making our way through, you know, with top priority to the people in critical need, like the landlord tenant piece we started with. Kind of just need to go back. A lot of thank yous were extended, Mayor. I know you did earlier, to our members here of the staff, our first responders in many ways, but I looked, I mean, the last meeting was before the storm. And so much happened and the town was rocked in such intermittent ways. And, you know, people had their own pockets. My basement had water we've never had. And many people had that kind of experience, still kind of clearing some of that out. You know, the town, I know Mr. Stafford had gotten extra of your staff out, the DCF staff, to collect the storm affected waste that had to be handled separately, and even coming around on second rounds. I think another one's still coming up on the 22nd. So just, you know, real big impact. And, you know, it really goes to climate change for those of us who subscribe to that point of view. I think it's pretty undeniable. You know, so the work the Environmental Commission is doing and that this body endorses in many ways, you know, I know that that's just an important piece. But I did try to finally get some information out to constituents in terms of the federal, state, county, Red Cross, you know, whatever information there is. And that, I know a lot of it was shared by others and through the township website as well. If any of my constituents who may still be listening want access to my newsletter, please email me at my township address. I'd be happy to add you to those things. In the realm of nice things that happened, I was able to represent our body, and I did send appreciation from all of you to the work of the Geyer family. Why I was at the ribbon cutting for the inclusionary playground that was being opened up just a week or two ago. Lovely to see young families. Some children played the recorder. You know, it was just a very nice, good feeling thing to be out with families like that. I wanted to also mention those of us who celebrate the Jewish holidays. It's a big arc. We have our New Year, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, and we're still sort of in holidays. It's right now a holiday called Sukkot. And at the culmination is another holiday called Simchat Torah, which is a rejoicing of the Torah itself, our scrolls. And on Church Street on the night of the 28th, which is a week from now, at 6 p.m., there will be a gathering of the local Jewish community. The congregations are gathering. It's something that happened a couple of years ago. And so my predecessor body, you know, you must have helped authorize that in some fashion, but or the township did. But nonetheless, it's an opportunity. Anybody can come and sort of share in that moment of sort of pride and just something that's happy. So with hope that we'll have weather like we had this past weekend. I'm sure there's more. I do want to return to the discussions, and I'm going to count on the fact that we will bring back discussions around how we may put more nuance onto the parking ordinance that we just passed, and look forward to working with all of you to do these things. Thanks, everybody.
Let's move to Councilwoman Schlager.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I have if I could go back for a second to the discussion items, I had a question about one of them. We kind of overlooked them a little bit. So the resolution to extend the rent increase moratorium, when does the current one expire?
The last day of this month.
Okay, so we have one more meeting before, right, we have a meeting next Tuesday, so we
Next
would.
Wednesday.
Wednesday, that's right, sorry, thank you. And so that would extend it for 3 more months till December 31st.
Yes, ma'am.
If that went through. Okay, all right, that was my question on that, thank you. And I want to hopefully invite everybody on Thursday, October 7th at the Van Vleck House. There will be a party for the park, and that would be the skate park. There will be a fundraiser celebrating Alexis Sabone, the 2020 Olympian champion that is helping out with the skate park. She's also an architect, and I hope that all of you could attend, and I also hope that many other people will attend as well. It's going to be an exciting evening to hear from Alexis. I also was very happy to, along with the mayor, go to the celebration to induct 3 Eagle Scouts to it was Troop 12, and also with Councilman Yacobelis to celebrate 2 other Eagle Scouts last week. I believe that was Troop 13. I might have them both, one or the other, but that's 5 Eagle Scouts in our town that have just gone to that rank, and it's pretty impressive to hear these kids. And we gave them resolutions from all of us, they were very appreciative, and wonderful young men and their families. So that's it. Thank you.
Councilwoman, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot going on, which is great. It shows the resilience of our town. Went to the sidewalk sale Saturday, as I know many of us stopped by. Spent quite a bit of time there and quite a bit of money, but it's all good. Really pleased that we were able to support the business district in Upper Montclair. Also then went over to Anderson Park for the Art in the Park, which is always a great event as well. And then went over with a couple of our colleagues to Edgemont Park for the Boy Scout, along Councilwoman Schlager's comments. We had an Eagle Scout do a great information board at Edgemont Park about Buzz Aldrin, which was very interesting to attend that as well. Thrilled that my friend and now work colleague Roger Terry is heading up the Montclair NAACP. Wish him much success in that position. Also want to extend my thanks to the first responders, the police, the fire, the EMTs, Department of Community Service, done a remarkable job in the worst flooding in the 24 years that I've lived here that I've seen. Kudos, Township Manager. I really appreciate what you've done, Mr. Stafford, and I know Mr. Scantlebury, and really all of the staff. I mean, everybody really came together. It was one hell of a storm, and that's a quote. And then just to conclude, I want to again thank my colleague and friend, Councilwoman Schlager, for her service on the Board of School Estimate. It was a pleasure and an honor to work with you on that. I wish you much success in your new position with the school district. Good for you. And Councilman Cummings, I look forward to working with you on the Board of School Estimate going forward. I know you and I have worked on school issues going way back when our kids were, I think, in elementary school even. So looking forward to that as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Councilman Yacobelis.
Thank you, Mayor. Echo a lot of the sentiments already expressed by colleagues here. I do want to take a minute to just kind of recap for the community too. I started a fundraiser the night of the storm, which ended up raising over $45,000 from over 400 people across Montclair. To date, we've dispersed 3/4 of the dollars, with the rest probably to go out in the next week or so. Direct aid has been given to 48 households, which is incredible in terms of helping people replace hot water heaters and pull out carpet that was soaked, or whatever the case may be, providing dehumidifiers, many different situations that money helped people in. We also helped many nonprofits in town directly with grants: the Human Needs Food Pantry, the Montclair Ambulance Unit, the Essex Youth Theater, the Montclair Inn, the Northeast Earth Coalition, specifically to provide personal care and feminine hygiene products in all of the free little pantries around town, the Vanguard Theater, and there will be some more to come as well. So I have spent hours and hours and hours and days over the last few weeks touring people's homes in all 4 wards, along several of our waterways, in some of the business districts, specifically downtown, Valley Road and Upper Montclair, where there's been total destruction of certain businesses, and where there's been just damage to products and other things like some of the homes have experienced. So there's a lot of suffering, a lot of people who can't afford to fix what's been lost or what's broken, who are trying to jump through all the hoops in terms of insurance, in terms of FEMA aid, and all those complications. So thankful to County Executive Joe DiVincenzo and our county commissioners for setting up the FEMA aid support operation at the same facility in West Orange, next to the Whole Foods at the Kmart, where vaccines are taken. So if you need help with FEMA aid, you can go there Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and someone will help you in terms of filling out your forms and what you will need to collect in advance. But generally, you need to have a written list of things that were lost or damaged. You need to have photos, and they'll guide you through that process. And also want to thank the governor on behalf of the businesses for providing grants ranging from $1,000 to $5,000 to businesses that were affected. And I think we're all hoping that we see additional state aid and federal aid specifically to help small businesses who are not covered by insurance or these aid programs, where $1,000 to $5,000 isn't going to be enough to help them reopen if they're closed. And in some cases, like Egan's and Halcyon, were hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, in lost inventory and equipment. It's just completely devastating. So not done yet with the fund. We are going to continue to do things like provide seed money for a Walnut Street business fundraiser that the brewery is going to host for the other businesses on Walnut that were impacted. We have and are providing the funding to broadly market the loveourmontclair.com website that the mayor, your task force, and the small business committee, that task force, came up with following the marketing campaign that you and I and Deputy Mayor Herlock, created and rolled out last year as part of that small business committee of the council to support businesses. So we are providing the dollars to do print and digital advertising to drive businesses to that site to do registration and to drive consumers to that site so that they can find businesses to match, for the products or services that they're looking for, to make sure that their dollars are being spent here in Montclair. So I think just all around, a lot of people working on some great things here, and couldn't do any of this without the generosity of over 400 people who made those contributions to be able to get direct aid to people who desperately needed it across our town. Other than that, I've just been out and about. It's been great. The Montclair Art Museum Community Festival this past weekend. I appreciate the Art Museum for asking me to come and speak. I appreciate Van Vleck and the skate park folks for asking me to be a guest bartender at that event. The Councilwoman Schlager mentioned, unfortunately, I will not be around and cannot be there. I went by and saw the kids doing the car wash for the crew, and I was grateful again to be able to give them a little bit of money from the fund to match up to $500 in contributions. And the last thing I'll mention is just in the spirit of continued service that we're just seeing across the community and generosity, our Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee has announced that the next cleanup weekend is going to be the weekend of October 2nd. So we'll be sending all of you information and putting information out to the public in terms of getting people signed up and registered to clean up local parks in town. And then we're hoping by extension, some other areas, potentially some storm affected areas, residents, businesses that may need some help mitigating some of the damage still. So we'll be putting out some information and asking all of you to participate and to cascade the information further out to the community at large in the coming days. Other than that, thank all of you for all of your service. And I'm glad everyone in this group and on this call was okay. And, you know, I know some personal damage and things were experienced, but at the end of the day, you know, several of you have mentioned the top talent we have in terms of first responders. And it's a miracle considering the loss of life we had in the state of New Jersey, that we had no loss of life here with all the trapped cars and people trapped in basements. So kudos and hats off to all of our first responders, and thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Russo?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. And to tag on to what Peter just said, we are trying to help the crew team, the rowing team at Montclair High School. I did go by with the car wash, but then gave them a donation and got a nice donation from our County Commissioner, Brendan Gill. I want to thank him, but it's really important because these young people, men and women, are struggling to recover from damage they incurred with their great sport. And, you know, there's so much good work being done. I thank you, Peter, for all the efforts you're making with the contributions for people. And then all the work that's being done by the, you know, Love Our Montclair. There's so much good work being done. I just want to recognize, as Councilor Deputy Mayor Herlock mentioned, because Councilor Yakabellis and I went with him to the BSA Troop 13 display, the Eagle Project for Buzz Aldrin. It was so great to see Christian Uva and the other students and the Boy Scouts do this project. And I explained to them, I had the book with me for President Kennedy's administration. Everybody knows how much I draw from Kennedy, but it was, you know, we don't have the moon landing without President Kennedy saying in 1961, let's do this in the next decade. And then we put John Glenn in orbit. We just saw 3 people or 4 people go into orbit through private initiatives, but it was John Glenn who went up in 1962, first astronaut in orbit, and then that led us to a few years later making the landing with Buzz Aldrin from Montclair. We've got to think back at history. I teach history, really, when I teach political science, and it was President Kennedy that gave us this goal and objective, which was inspiring at the time. I was only 15 years old, 14 years old, really. And then he was killed, and we lost him, and we lost that inspiration. Looking back at history also, I want to thank everyone for participating in the 9/11 observances, especially Diana Stewart for speaking on behalf of the families, and she and her 2 sons, Eamon and Franco. All the people who came out, the firefighters, the police, the first responders, the EMTs, the mayor, the council members who came out. You know, we just have to really remember these historical events that lead to these great achievements, and then the tragedies that make us whole again. We have to come together, as I said, to unite against negative conflict. And we have to remember what happened on the 9/11. I want to thank the president of Montclair State, the new president, Jonathan Koppel, who not only came to our services in Montclair at Watchung Plaza with our nice little monument with the 9 names of our loved ones we lost, but he also went to the high school at the Ron Rubin Monument, which is a beam from the World Trade Center that has been put there by Ron Rubin's family. It's been there for 20 years. And that is something that President Koppel spent time with volunteers, professors, faculty, high school students, Montclair State students, Montclair High School faculty. Really great things, and I want to thank President Koppel for Montclair State and also wish him good luck in his new role as president. So, Mayor, I just want to say again, people are going to read this week's paper and see the interviews by me. I think Mayor Jackson may have been interviewed, and it's Mayor Remsen, Mayor Freed, all the mayors that really are still around, former mayors, that is, former mayors, about what we should do on our school system, in our, Board of Education. And I have very strong views from my own experience. So I'll let it stay and see what the paper says, what they take from my answers. I answer with good appointments and good, people on Board of School Estimate. We can do a good job in this current system. And I wish people would read and look at what I said in this week's paper, whatever's posted. and then I'll talk some more about it before the election. But I have experience in this, and I have been through all the conflicts and the problems of the Board of School estimate and budgets. And when I came in as mayor, to find out there was 700,000 taken out of the teachers and faculty and staff healthcare was a shock to me, that I had to help restore it with our superintendent and our Board of School estimate. But it was something that was done that shouldn't have been done in late 1999. When I came in 2000, we had to make sure that never happens again. And I just appeal to people to look at what our system has been, how it's been helpful with the magnet school system, the history of Montclair. And yes, we always need fresh voices. We need new people. We need to have a new look at things at times. There is a time here for us to take a look, but people should look at the history of Montclair. And I think that that's very important to inform them of what to do. So I'll talk some more about it another time. But thank you all for 9/11 participation. It really means a lot to me as the mayor at the time, and it meant a lot to Diana Stewart and the families that are still around. I want to shout out again to Lisa Collins and her family for bringing the lei from Hawaii that was put on the monument. So anybody gets a chance, go to 9/11 Monument at Watchung, and don't forget the Ron Rubin Monument, the beam from the World Trade Center that's at the high school on the corner of Park and Chestnut. Thank you, Mayor.
No, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. And, certainly, it was a difficult time for sure. And, your leadership during 9/11, certainly was so important. So thank you. And, certainly, as you noted, it was important for us all to get together to remember, as we always do and always must. As my other colleagues noted, it's been as per Montclair's way, lots going on and lots of things throughout the town. And certainly it's been great to be out there with so many of you doing a lot of these different pieces. I'll just say, quickly as they, as we continue to feel the effects of I agree, Councilwoman Price Havens, of climate change, right? And the dynamics and the new realities that we face, certainly, whether it's looking at those devastated by flooding, the last storm that we had, and certainly I think anyone, I know so many of my colleagues did do this, going out and talking to residents, or seeing just people's lives, out on their front porch or in their driveway, just or on their lawn, just devastating. We've got to look at, and to steal a phrase here, we've got to look at building back better, and what does that look like, and how can we do things in a way that is preparing for that new normal. That's what we have to do as public servants, and part of our obligation. But always remembering it's impacting people, and really trying to do all we can to help people in their moments of need. So I really appreciate the work that everyone has done to try and make that happen. And then by extension, Mr. Stafford, Mr. Scantlebury, the whole town team really getting out there and trying to get that to happen, right? Carrying that out, those policies and that helps. So big thank you there. Mr. Scantlebury, also a big thank you. Related, appreciate you kind of running point on some of the pieces that I've been sharing with you around PSE&G and some of the outages that just continue to be there, and it has to be addressed, and see what maybe some of these underlying causes are. Certainly, I know that a number of us have discussed this. We've got town halls on this, had PSE&G on. We've had PSE&G here, but we've got to keep addressing it till we kind of get that fixed as well, because in addition to the storms that we have to be ready for, and they have to get power back on, we're losing it at times intermittently in between, and we've got to figure that out. So that's a quality of life issue as well, we continue to work on. I certainly know the important business, these decisions that we're all making here really can help people in that quality of life area, in that space. And I think that we are all focused on that, and making sure that we have residents in mind as we make these decisions. So I want to thank all my colleagues for the work, whether it's the conversation around schools and school funding and Board of School estimate, or we look broadly throughout the township and what residents are facing, or our businesses or others. It all ties together. So I want to thank everyone for the service and the work, and a lot of work to continue to be done, but we're going to keep at it, keep working on it together. So appreciate that. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's been moved, and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 And David did the double aye. I think I will give you 2 votes on that, David. Yes.
And it's now late, 7 o'clock here. So.
All right, everybody, we are adjourned. Stay well, everybody.
We could go on, David, right? Good night, everybody.
Repeat.
Good night. Thank you.
See
Good
y'all.
night.
Good night.